June 2008. I opened my eyes to a room full of crashing stock charts and the smell of cheap cigarettes. The Hichang Securities Trading Center, a place I had only seen in old photographs. On the giant screen above the hall, green numbers were falling without end. All around me, people were breaking. A man squeezed his water bottle until it cracked in his fist. A woman was crying into her phone, begging someone on the other end. In the center of the hall, a man in a bright flower shirt sat on the floor, completely still. His eyes had nothing in them. This was the worst crash in the history of the Chinese stock market. The index had been above 6,000 points. Now it was falling off a cliff. At every desk, workers were picking up phones and delivering bad news. Fingers moved across calculators, adding up the damage. On every screen, the same red numbers, family savings disappearing in real time. My name is Lin Fan. 5 minutes ago, I was 32 years old. I worked as an AI architect at one of the biggest tech companies in the country. In 2024, I was rebuilding the core of our next-generation AI model. 3 nights with no sleep, screens glowing in an empty office. Then my heart gave out, and the world turned black. When I opened my eyes, I was here, 16 years in the past, standing in a trading hall full of old machines and broken people. I looked at my hands, thin, smooth, young. I walked to the glass doors and studied my own reflection. 18 years old. The summer after high school, a face I had almost forgotten. I came back, I whispered, and the words made my lips tremble. That was when my fingers brushed something cold and smooth in my pocket. It was not a Nokia. It was not a flip phone. It was my test phone from 2024, the one I carried everywhere. The screen was dead black, but the weight in my hand was real. Inside this phone was my life's work, an offline AI with a full local database. I pressed it against my chest. My heart was racing. I came back to the past, and the future came with me. I slipped behind a thick concrete pillar, away from every pair of eyes in the room. My thumb shook as I pressed the power button. The screen woke up instantly. A soft blue sphere appeared in the center. No loading, no delay. The interface was bare, just one glowing icon in the middle of the screen. I held my breath and tapped it. The system check finished in seconds, no network, but the local database was complete. Everything was still here. All the data from 2024 saved on this one device. Stock records, technical files, world events, 16 years of information at my fingertips. Charts and data filled the screen more than any computer in this building could handle. In a world where smartphones did not even exist yet, this phone was a weapon. I opened the search bar and started typing. June 12, 2008. I punched in today's date. The query sat in the search bar, ready. The AI answered before I could blink. A full stock chart loaded, every price movement from today, already recorded. The market had crashed today. Almost every stock hit its lowest allowed price. But one name stood out, Hihong Holdings. At 2:45 p.m. today, everything would change. A leaked business deal would pull big money in and the stock would shoot straight up. From the very bottom of the day to the very top. The chart showed a clean vertical line, a 20% swing in a single afternoon. I stared at those numbers. This was real. This was happening today, 20%. Right here, right now, and I was the only person alive who knew. I had 40 minutes. The clock on the main board read 2:05 p.m. Hihong Holdings was right there on the board, down 9.8%, stuck at the bottom. Sell orders were stacked deep. Nobody in this hall would touch it. Nobody except me. But there was a problem. I reached into my pocket. One wrinkled 50 yuan bill and an ID card. That was everything I owned. Even if I doubled that 50, I would have 100. That was nothing. I needed real money, someone else's money. My eyes moved across the hall, and they stopped on the man in the flower shirt, still sitting on the floor. I knew this man. In my past life, the news had told his whole story. Zhao Dahu, the biggest private trader in Hichang. He had thrown everything into the market, his house, his car, every last coin he had. In the original timeline, he lost it all. Today, then he drank poison right outside this building, and that was the end of his story. If nobody stepped in, this man would be gone by tonight. I closed my eyes for 1 second. When I opened them, the nervousness was gone. I walked toward him, an 18-year-old body, a 32-year-old mind, and 40 minutes to rewrite everything. Dahu was still at his station, eyes fixed on the red numbers dropping across his screens. Want to make your money back? I kept my voice low and steady. To him, I was nobody, just a teenager in a dark sweater standing over a grown man. He raised his head slowly, not understanding why I was there. Then the confusion turned to anger. Get lost, he snapped. I'm busy. I didn't move. Behind him, the chart for Hihong was still falling. He looked up at me again, sharper this time, trying to read me. Your whole position is one stock, I said. Hihong Holdings, you're trapped. 800,000, all of it locked in. Am I wrong? I watched his face change. Nobody was supposed to know that number. What he didn't know was that my AI had already scanned the wrinkled trading slip in his hand. Only a small corner of the paper was visible, but the AI rebuilt the full image from that alone. I had every detail of his position before I even opened my mouth. Dahu got to his feet, eyes full of doubt. How did you know that? That part isn't important, I said, and pointed at the main board. 40 minutes until the market closes. Hihong is stuck at the daily low right now. Nobody will go near it. If you don't want tomorrow to be the same, your only way out is to listen to me. Listen to you? His face tightened. What does some kid who hasn't finished school know about stocks? Arms crossed. He stared me down, still not believing a word. I let the corner of my mouth rise just barely. Whether I know stocks doesn't matter, I said. What matters is something else. I stepped closer, dropping my voice so only he could hear. I have inside information. I leaned in close to his ear. At 2:45, big money moves in, the price will fly. I pulled back with a small smile. That was enough to get him thinking. How much cash do you have left? I asked, glancing at my phone. He was shaken. Something about me didn't match what he expected. I knew what he saw, eyes that didn't belong on a teenager's face. We sat down at his station, both of us facing the screens. 50,000, he said, voice barely there. That's the money for my daughter's school. His voice cracked on the word daughter. Fear was sitting right behind his eyes when he looked at the screen. 50,000 is enough, I said. I checked the clock. 2:10 p.m., 35 minutes left. Put all of it into Hihong at the lowest price. Do it now. Dahu shoved back from the desk. You're insane. There are tens of thousands of sell orders at the bottom, and the screen showed exactly that, nothing but red. Sellers everywhere. Those are fake orders, I said, keeping my voice flat. The big players put them there to scare people while they buy quietly. I said it without any change in my face. A lie, but a necessary one. The truth was simpler. The AI had already shown me what would happen today. At 2:45, those sell orders will vanish, I told him. Buy now or miss your chance. Wait too long and the price will move without you. He was still hesitating. I needed one more push. You already lost 500,000 out of 800. What's another 50? But if I'm right, your account goes up 20% before the close. Sell tomorrow at the open, and you get back half your money. Your call. Dahu turned and stared at the board. All he saw was green, and in this market, green meant loss. Sweat ran down his face in thick drops. I could see it in his eye, the last fight of a man with nothing left to lose. Fine, he said, turning toward the counter. If I go down, I go all the way down. He rushed to the trading desk, teeth together, fists tight. I watched him go, keeping my face steady. In my pocket, the phone glowed with a message. Trust level 85%, 34 minutes until the move. Everything was on schedule. The first real gain in this new life wouldn't be money. It would be a man who owed me one. The minutes ticked by. Around us, the whole hall was cursing at the falling market. But Dahu and I had our eyes on only one name, Hihong Holdings. We waited in the middle of the trading floor, him with his arms crossed, me with my phone in hand. 2:40 p.m. The stock still hadn't moved. Dahu had gone pale. The screen still read -9%. Hihong Holdings locked at the daily low, not a single buyer anywhere. Kid, he said through his teeth, are you playing me? This stock hasn't moved at all, he said, pushing closer. Quiet, I said, without turning my head. Just watch. 2:44 p.m., 1 minute left. Then I noticed it. The sell orders on Hihong had stopped growing. 2:45, 0 seconds. 3, 2, 1. The board lit up. Hihong Holdings plus 20%. The wall of sell orders that had been holding the stock down vanished in an instant. Across the hall, people stood up from their seats. Buy orders flooded the screen like a wave, smashing through every price level. A woman nearby froze at her monitor, mouth open. The chart line went straight up from the daily low to the daily high in seconds. The whole hall went wild. People were shouting, pointing, grabbing each other by the shoulders. On my phone, the profit number climbed past 9,000. The big board confirmed it. Hihong Holdings had hit the daily limit up. Dahu stared at his own screen, wide-eyed, not moving. The lost numbers in his account were flipping, red turning to green, one line at a time. Hihong Holdings, daily limit. The comeback was complete. On the phone, the profit passed 19,000. His 50,000 had nearly doubled. 3 minutes. From the very bottom to the very top in just 3 minutes. Dahu jumped out of his chair so fast the seat rolled into the wall behind him. Around us, other traders hit their desks, furious at themselves for not buying in time. Dahu stood in the center of the chaos, looking like a man who just woke up from a nightmare. He leaned on the counter, breathing hard, sweat dripping down his face, but behind it all, pure relief. Then he spun around, searching through the crowd. The hall was packed, hundreds of people between us. I was still leaning against the pillar, watching him search. For me, this was just the beginning. Dahu found me. He came across the hall so fast he looked ready to drop to his knees. He stopped right in front of me, staring like I was something sacred. He leaned over the desk, towering above me, but his eyes told a different story, pure respect. What should I call you, he asked, sweat still running down his face. Just call me Lin Fan, I said. The 50,000 I just put in, it made 10,000, he said, barely holding it together, plus the shares I was already holding. Today I got back over 100,000. He leaned in even closer. Master, what about tomorrow? Do I sell? Tomorrow it'll jump 5 points right at the open, I said. Sell everything. Not a single share left. He nodded fast, ready to follow every word. Around us, the trading hall buzzed with noise and red numbers. And something clicked in his head. His hand shot into his bag. He pulled out a stack of bills and held them toward me. A small thank you, master, Dahu said. Please accept it. I reached across the table and took the 2,000 without hesitating. That money was mine. I earned it. And in 2008, 2,000 was the perfect starting point. Thanks, I said. Give me your number. I might need your help with a few things soon. He agreed before I even finished the sentence. Anything you need, master. Just say the word, my life is yours. He bowed slightly and held out a business card. DEFA Building Materials Trading Company. General Manager, Zhao Gang. So that was his real name, Building Materials. That detail stopped me cold. Yuchu's family factory was going to collapse because its supply chain for building materials broke apart, and now I had a direct contact in that world. I smiled. I turned and headed for the exit. Sunlight poured in the moment I pushed through the doors. 2,000 in my pocket and a plan already forming. But first, I needed to move fast before Yuchu's father lost everything. Every day counted. The clock was already running. I had to grow this money into something real before the window closed. And in 2008, opportunities were everywhere if you knew where to find them. The stock market wasn't the only way. There was one more place where my skills could make fast money. I pulled out my phone. The AI lit up on screen, ready for a command. Search something for me, I said. In 2008, right now, are there any big tech problems or rewards? The system started processing. Results came back within seconds. Tonight at 8, a famous antivirus company called Jinshan was going to face a massive attack on its servers. At the same time, a new version of the Panda virus was spreading fast through the dark web, and on a hacker forum, someone was offering 50,000 yuan to whoever could write a fix. I stopped walking. 50,000. My hand dropped to my side. A smile crept onto my face. Small reward, but good enough as a warm-up. I headed for the nearest internet cafe. The summer of 2008 pressed down on the city like a weight. The streets burned with heat, and the air itself felt restless. My shirt was soaked through by the time I reached the main road. The 2,000 in my pocket felt important, but I knew better. Compared to the empire I was planning to build, this money was nothing. Not even close. I needed much, much more. I flagged down a red taxi. Black Eagle Internet Cafe, I told the driver. Sufu Road. The biggest internet cafe in all of Haicheng, exactly where I needed to be. Through the window, I spotted the neon sign. This was the place. I pushed through the heavy glass door and stepped into a different world, dark, loud, and packed with old screens. Hundreds of thick, box-shaped monitors glowed in the dim light. This was what 2008 really looked like. I walked through the smoky hall, past rows of people bent over their keyboards. Clicking keys, shouting gamers, the smell of instant noodles, it hit me from every side. I walked to the front desk. All night, I said. The girl behind the counter barely looked at me. I put a 20 yuan bill on the counter. She chewed her gum, tapped something on her own screen, and slid me a card without a word. I took the card and headed deeper inside. Past the smoke, past the noise, toward the back corner where the broken machine sat. Every screen I passed showed the same kind of thing. Shooters or fantasy games with little characters running through villages. I found my spot, a row in the far corner. Most of the machines dead, one still working. The mouse was buried under a thick layer of dust. The left button barely clicked. I pulled out a tissue and cleaned it. This would do. I sat down and put my hands on the keyboard. A greasy face popped into my view from the side, grinning way too close. I turned my head, and there he was. Dapang chewing on a sausage, round face and all. Zhu Dapang, my closest friend through all 3 years of high school. In my other life, when I had nothing left, this guy sold his car just to put money in my hand. But right now, he was just a kid, 18, headphones on, lost in some online game. He grinned at me with that baby face. No worries, no weight on his shoulders. I smiled back. Seeing him like this hit harder than I expected. His screen showed some fantasy world, villages, markets, a little character running down a dirt road. How come you're here? He asked. I thought you said you were staying home to rest these days. His hand was still on the mouse, half playing, half paying attention. He pulled his headphones down around his neck and waited for my answer. I came to do something important, I said. I kept the smile on my face but didn't explain. The memories from my other life pushed up for a moment. Him holding out those car keys, that stupid kind grin, but I shoved them back down. No time for feelings. Every second was worth money. I turned back to my screen. Lines of code filled the monitor as I opened the browser and dug deep. My fingers moved fast, typing in a dark web address that only a few people in the world would recognize. 2008 was one of the worst years for computer viruses, and that meant opportunity. The forum loaded. GeekHub. Right at the top sat the Panda virus post, and the reward was still open. The glow of the screen settled on my face. This was where the real work started. My fingers kept moving, typing line after line into the old machine. Out there in the digital world, a storm was building, a coordinated attack on the country's biggest antivirus companies. My phone from 2024 sat on the desk beside the monitor, its screen already showing a network map that no device in this era could produce. I had pulled it from my pocket just moments ago. Payload deployed. The phone was connected to this broken-down computer by a single cable, and it was already working. I reached over and tapped the dark screen. I gave the command silently in my head, transparent transfer mode, activate, take over this machine's full access. The AI connected instantly. 16 years of future technology flowing through a single cable into a 2008 computer. The phone screen gave a quiet glow. A message appeared on the display, visible only to me. Host access confirmed, scanning network. I held the phone steady in front of the keyboard and let it do its work. Then a warning popped up, red text, countdown timers, and one word across the top. Alert. High-risk worm detected. Storm 1 hidden code present. Full outbreak in 15 minutes. Storm 1. That name stopped me cold. In my previous life, this virus hit in June 2008 and destroyed everything in its path. It took down a third of every internet cafe in the country. Entire rooms of machines, all dead at once. The virus went straight for the management system, the one weak point every cafe shared. After that, it flooded every screen with pop-up ads until the machines were useless. Cafe owners lost everything overnight and most of them never reopened. I came here tonight to write code and collect a bounty. I never expected the virus to already be here, hiding inside this very network, waiting to go off. I looked at the swirling code on my monitor, and the corner of my mouth lifted. Then a shout broke out from across the hall. Blue screen. The kind every computer user fears, white text, frozen machine, nothing you can do. More voices. The whole main floor was losing it. Admin, everything's crashed. I looked up from my corner and saw it for myself. Screen after screen, all turning blue, and I watched it happen with a calm I probably shouldn't have felt. It spread through the rows like falling tiles, one machine pulling down the next. Then the blue screens turned black, and a skull appeared with red text. Want to unlock? 50 yuan per machine. Every monitor in the building showed the same skull and the same demand. A guy in a green hoodie slammed his mouse hard enough to crack the desk. The one beside him sat frozen with sweat running down his face, staring at his dead screen. The cafe owner burst out of the back room, a heavy man in a light blue shirt, glasses barely hanging on. Don't panic, he shouted, throwing his hands on the nearest keyboard. I'm restarting the server. Give me a second. He had no idea how useless that would be. The restart changed nothing. The red lock came right back. Even his billing computer was locked, his whole business, every machine, every system, completely frozen. The panic in his eyes was real now. 300 seats, full on a weekend night, and not a single machine working. He stood in the middle of the red-lit room and shouted, his voice cracking. Whoever fixes this gets free internet for a whole year. No one answered. He grabbed his phone, an old Nokia with a tiny screen. He started dialing a repair company. They told him 2 hours minimum. From my corner, I watched all of this without moving. My screen showed blue like everyone else's, but that was just a cover. Underneath, the AI still had full control. Scan the virus source, I told it. Build me a kill script, the fastest, hardest one you can make. The phone lit up. Code started filling the small screen in seconds. Command confirmed. Generating. The progress bar finished before I could blink. Lines of code scrolled down the display, dense and tight. The AI had written a weapon clean, sharp, and 10 years ahead of anything that existed in 2008. I read through it on the screen. Not a single wasted line. Dapeng sat right beside me, eyes wide. I set my hands on the keyboard. Something shifted inside me. I wasn't a teenager in a cheap internet cafe anymore. I was the man who had once stood at NASDAQ as a chief technology officer. I hit enter. The blue screen vanished, and a black command window took its place. My fingers moved across the keys, feeding the AI's code into the system line by line. The rhythm was steady, fast, controlled, exact. Every keystroke hit the old keyboard with a sharp, loud click. Dapeng leaned in. You can write code? He asked. He was staring so hard that the sausage fell right out of his mouth and onto his pants. I didn't answer. My eyes stayed locked on the screen. At the top of the window, the program name glowed, Killstorm. Dapeng watched the commands scroll past, his mouth still hanging open. What I was really doing was translating the AI's output into code that a machine from 2008 could understand. The AI built the weapon. My job was to make it fit a world that wasn't ready for it. 5 minutes later, I typed the last character, then pressed enter hard, and Dapeng flinched beside me. A green progress bar filled the screen. Local scan complete, broadcasting patch to all machines. My machine was clean. The fix was already spreading through the network. The screen next to mine still showed the red skull, glowing in the dark. Then it blinked, and the skull was gone. The familiar Windows XP desktop loaded in its place, blue sky and green hills. One by one, every monitor in the row came back to life. A guy across the room jumped out of his chair, grinning. Third machine, fourth, fifth. The whole floor was waking up. The skulls vanished one after another, replaced by the same blue sky desktop. My screen showed the final message, network broadcast complete. All machines patched. Cheers broke out across the room. Mine's working. Mine too. People were laughing, shaking their heads in relief. Every machine in the building was back to normal, just like that. Boss Lee stood at the front desk, staring at his Nokia. The call hadn't even connected. His billing system showed a green checkmark, fully restored, as if nothing had happened. He scratched the top of his bald head. I didn't even do anything, he muttered. He spun around, looking for an answer. Who fixed this? The red-haired girl behind the counter stared back at him, just as confused. She pointed toward the far corner of the room. The signal came from over there. Boss Lee followed her finger and saw a teenager sitting alone in the back row, completely unbothered. I was already closing the command window with one calm click of the mouse. On my screen now was the Jinshan antivirus forum, my post already drafted, code attached, analysis included. Boss Lee started walking toward me. He was no tech expert, but even he understood what it meant when one machine heals an entire network from the inside. He moved faster, weaving through the rows toward my corner. I was uploading everything, the kill tool, the source code, the firewall patch, to a security bounty board. The upload bar sat at 62% and climbing. The post title was simple, Storm 1 Kill Tool and Code Analysis. The bounty, 50,000 yuan. Behind me, Boss Lee stood with his mouth half open, too shocked to say a single word. Dapeng stood behind me, holding his breath, completely frozen. He stared at me like I had just crawled out of a spaceship. When did you secretly become a hacker? He asked. I didn't answer. Boss Lee was still hovering behind me. The forum will handle the rest, I said. Across the city, in a brightly lit office, a system was running code verification, 20% and climbing. Dozens of engineers sat at their desks, heads in their hands, losing the same fight against the same virus. An intern spotted something on a forum and called out. Someone posted a kill tool online. The forum post was already live, full download, code attached, a start button waiting. The team lead at his desk waved it off without looking. Don't waste time on forums right now. It's probably clickbait, he said, or a new variant of the virus itself. The tech director didn't even lift his head. His fingers moved across the keyboard like he was fighting the clock. Boss, please, the intern said again. His voice was shaking now. The kill tool was already running on his screen, 43%. The code is beautiful, he whispered. The tech director finally stopped typing. He pushed off from his desk and rolled his chair straight over. One look at the screen, and his eyes locked on, sharp, focused, almost scared. The code structure was clean, tight, and perfectly balanced. Every engineer in the room gathered behind him to look. It used almost no memory and ran faster than anything their team had built in a week. Who wrote this? The team lead said, his voice completely different now. Must be one of the top hackers in the country. Download it, push it to every machine now. 3 minutes later, the patch was being sent to machines all across the network. Back at my screen, a private message window appeared. Jinshan Security Center, their verified account. Friend, your code is perfect. You bought us real time. My phone buzzed. Bank notification. 50,000 yuan already in my account. The message kept going. Want to come to Beijing? Name your salary. I smiled and typed back 2 words. Still studying. Then I closed the window. 50,000 from the bounty, 2,000 from the stock market. My starting money was set. I stood up and unplugged my phone. I turned around. Boss Lee was at the counter, watching me like I had grown a second head. He had probably been standing there the whole time. "Any chance you could waive my internet fees?" I asked. I gave him my friendliest smile. Boss Lee nearly tripped over his own feet. "Free, all free. Come anytime. Drinks on the house too." He was rubbing his hands together, grinning. "That virus just now, how did you—" "System hole," I said. "I patched your server already. This kind of thing won't get in again." I kept my voice flat, like fixing a virus was the same as tying my shoes. Boss Lee shook his head. "If that ran all night, I'd have lost tens of thousands. Thank you." He reached behind the counter, still beaming. A 1,000 yuan internet card appeared in his hand. I shook my head. "Keep the card. Just save the best machines for my friend Dapang when he comes in." Behind me, Dapang dropped to the floor and grabbed my leg like his life depended on it. "You're my real brother from now on," he said, grinning so hard his eyes disappeared. I pushed him off. He landed on the floor and just sat there, looking wounded. I checked my phone 10:30 at night. By tomorrow, every security company in the country would be looking for the person behind that post. I didn't care about the fame. I had bigger things to think about. The night air hit me cool and clean as I stepped out of the cafe. I asked the AI in my head, "Find Shen Yuchu's current location." The answer came in seconds. My phone lit up with the search results. Target, Shen Yuchu. Hicheng Central Hospital, Emergency Department. Father admitted, heart attack. Everything inside me went still. In my past life, it was this exact night. Thugs came to the hospital demanding money. Yuchu's father had collapsed and she was alone with no one to help. The men who showed up were not there to talk, they were there to take everything. To pay for her father's surgery, she signed a contract in her own blood. She even went to beg that rich kid, the one who would ruin her entire life. That night was the moment everything broke for her and for me. Not this time. I stopped a taxi and threw myself into the back seat. The driver glanced at me through the mirror. "Central Hospital," I said. "Fast as you can. Faster. I'll pay double." The taxi shot forward, tires ripping through the wet road. I gripped the phone in my pocket. The 50,000 yuan sitting in that account was not just money, it was the first real weapon I had in this second life. Through the rain and the wipers, the red hospital cross appeared in the dark. I threw money at the driver and ran straight into the storm. Cold rain hit my face, and for 1 second my head went perfectly clear. I pushed through the glass doors, soaking wet, sharper than I had been all night. The hospital lobby smelled like chemicals and damp clothes. I didn't need to ask for directions. Every turn of this place was burned into my memory. Emergency observation area, bed 302. I slowed my pace in the corridor, still dripping. The hallway stretched out ahead, full of patients and worried families. In my last life, I came too late. By the time I arrived, Yuchu was sitting alone at the end of an empty hall, a blood-stained debt note in her lap, her eyes already dead. That memory pushed me forward. I turned the corner. Same hallway, same night, but this time I was not too late. 5 or 6 men in black tank tops had her surrounded outside the emergency room. The one in front was bald, built heavy, with tattoos covering both arms. A thick gold chain hung from his neck, and his face said he was done being patient. I stopped at the edge of the wall and watched. "Your old man's finished," the bald one said. "Hand over the factory that covers the debt. Sign the paper, now. Sign, and we'll cover the surgery. Simple deal. Otherwise, nobody walks through that door tonight." And there she was, right in the middle of all of them, Yuchu. She stood in front of the emergency room door with her arms spread wide, blocking it. Wet hair stuck to her white face. She looked like she might fall apart any second, but she bit down on her lip and held her ground, not one step back. She hadn't moved, arms wide, her whole body pressed against the hospital room door. "This is a hospital," she shouted. "You can't do this here." Her voice was shaking, but there was something hard underneath it. She held up her phone. 110 already dialed. The call timer running. The bald man cracked his knuckles. "Called the cops, did you? Debts get paid. That's how the world works. Even the police know that." Yuchu held her ground, but he didn't care. He grinned and reached toward her. "Go in there and pull the old man's oxygen line," he told his men. "Then we'll see how fast she signs." A few doctors and nurses stepped forward, wanting to stop it. One look from the thugs sent them right back again. Yuchu closed her eyes. She stood there alone, and I could feel her breaking from where I watched. The bald man's hand came down toward her shoulder, and I caught his wrist before it landed. "Making trouble at a hospital," I said. "Not very smart." The whole corridor went silent. Yuchu's eyes flew open. I stood between them, still dripping from the rain. I kept my gaze forward, not on her, on him. I put every bit of cold I had right behind my eyes. She knew me, Lin Fan, same school, different class. We had never spoken a single word to each other before tonight. At school, I was just the quiet one who always scored first. Our families lived a few streets apart, but our worlds never crossed. Every doctor and patient in the hall had backed away. I was the only one who stepped forward. The surprise on Wang Qiang's face lasted half a second before the anger took over. He yanked hard, trying to rip his wrist free, but my grip held. He was twice my size, and he could not shake me loose. "Where did you come from, you little punk?" he snarled. "Just the two of us standing in the long, quiet corridor. Playing hero for some girl?" he said. "You want to die?" He pulled back his free fist. I didn't even blink. Inside my head, the AI was already running. Face scan, full search, everything at once. I pulled out my phone. 1 second was all I needed. The screen lit up with a match. Target Wang Qiang. His full name, his street name, his whole record, laid out in front of me. Low-level boss in a loan shark gang based right here in Hicheng. And the weakness he had been stealing from his own boss's collections to cover his gambling losses. Everything I needed found in 1 second. I let go of his wrist and gave him a light push that sent him stumbling back 2 steps. "I don't want to fight," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a tissue. I turned and held it out to Yuchu. "Dry your face." You'll get sick. She took it without a word, staring at me like I had fallen out of the sky. Wang Qiang's face twisted. Nobody ignores him and gets away with it. He shouted at his men, and they came rushing down the hallway toward me. I turned back and locked my eyes on Wang Qiang. I held that stare and did not let go. Then I stepped close enough that only he could hear me. Wang Qiang, Chengnan Underground Den, Table 13. You lost 200,000 on a bad hand. That was company money. His foot froze mid-step, nailed to the floor. He stared at me like he had just seen a ghost. I held his gaze and let the silence do the work. What did you just say? He stammered. I let the corner of my mouth lift, just barely. And I kept going, quiet, fast, right into his ear. I put my hand on his shoulder like we were old friends. If Brother Long finds out you took those interest payments and used them to fill your own hole, how long do you think you keep that hand? Cold sweat ran down his forehead. His fist clenched tight at his side. He had hidden this from everyone, his crew, even his own wife. Who are you? His voice cracked like a boy's. I patted his frozen shoulder. Who I am doesn't matter. The Shen family's loan isn't due yet. You came early tonight to squeeze them for cash to cover your own mess. That sentence broke the last wall inside him. I stepped back and raised my voice so the whole hallway could hear. Still here? Should I call Brother Long and say hello? I didn't have Brother Long's number. I didn't even know what the man looked like. But a man sitting on a secret that big cannot afford to take chances. When you hold the right information, you hold everything. Wang Qiang's face went through 3 colors in 2 seconds. He was trying to decide what if this kid really has connections. He couldn't risk it. He ground his teeth until I heard them creak. Fine, he barked, pointing past me at Yuchu. This brat saved you today, but the debt stays. 3 days. If you still can't pay, I'll tear this building apart. His men turned and shuffled down the corridor with their heads low. The hallway went quiet, and my shoulders finally dropped. If Wang Qiang had been the type to pull a knife first and talk later, my only plan was to grab Yuchu and run. But the AI's data was perfect, and his own fear did the rest. I turned around to face her. She was still gripping that tissue with both hands like it was the only thing keeping her standing. Then she broke. Tears poured down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you, Lin Fan. Something twisted deep in my chest. In my last life, I told myself I wasn't good enough for someone like her. When she needed me most, I disappeared. This time I was right here. It's over now, I said, as gently as I could. The cold voice I had used on Wang Qiang was gone. I couldn't hold it up around her. But the surgery, she said, still crying. The doctor told me. She looked toward the sealed emergency room doors. If they don't operate soon, her voice broke before she could finish. How much? I asked. 50,000, she whispered. Just the first surgery is 50,000. She dropped her head. Tears hit the hospital floor. We sold everything at home. Our savings are frozen. My hand found the phone in my pocket and the 50,000 yuan sitting in the account behind that screen. 50,000. My fingers closed around the phone in my pocket. Right there on the screen, 50,000 yuan, earned barely half an hour ago. If I hadn't taken that bounty tonight, I would have nothing to give her. I pulled out the phone and looked down at her. Give me the hospital payment number. I held the phone out, waiting for her answer. The hospital billing number, I said. Or your bank card, either one works. She looked up at me, searching my face for a reason not to trust this. No more talking, every minute counts. Something shifted in her eyes right then. I kept my voice light. This is a loan. After you graduate, you work for me to pay it back. Interest at the highest bank rate, and you have to cook for me. She didn't answer, just sat there looking at me like I was someone she had never met before. 10 minutes later, the hospital cashier took the card and processed the payment. Bed 302, surgery team, go now. The staff moved fast. The surgery light came on, and the hallway went quiet again. That was when Yuchu's legs gave out, and I caught her before she fell. She leaned into me, and I could smell the rain still in her hair. She gripped my arm until her knuckles turned white. I will pay you back, Lin Fan, I swear it. Her lips were still trembling when she finished. I looked into her eyes and gave her one slow nod. She held my gaze, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. I leaned against the wall and watched the rain slide down the window. 50,000 yuan gone before it even settled in my account. But I felt nothing close to regret. Money was just a number now, and some things no number could ever bring back. I stood alone in the empty corridor and quietly called the AI. The clock on the wall read 11:47. I held the phone close and whispered, make me a plan. How do I start from 0 and turn it into 1,000,000 in 3 days? The message was already sent. I needed to erase the Shen family's debt, every last cent of it. The AI answered in seconds. Use the gap in the ringtone billing system, combine it with the hottest SP services, expected return, 2,000%. 2,000% medium risk. I could work with that. I walked down the corridor, staring out at the city beyond the glass. Behind me, Hihong Central Hospital sat quiet under the dark sky. The rain had stopped, but I was just getting started. 2 in the morning, and I was standing at the internet cafe door. Inside, the all-night crowd was in full swing, screens glowing, keyboards rattling. A girl with wild red hair was working the counter, looking bored out of her mind. The place smelled like old noodle soup and energy drinks, same as always. You're finally back, Dapeng called from the counter, chopsticks in one hand. He had been leaning over the bar, chatting up the cashier with some stories she clearly didn't believe. Dapeng grinned. Boss Lee saved the VIP room for you. Real sofa, cold air, and a whole case of cola. I walked straight into the back, the so-called VIP section. A small room behind frosted glass, but it had everything I needed. 2 computers with decent power, a leather sofa, and enough cola to last a week. Stop playing games, I said. Time to work. I reached into the box and grabbed a cold can. The cola went down fast and pushed the exhaustion back a step. Dapeng blinked at me. Work? At 2 in the morning? My fingers were already moving on the keyboard. No more small jobs. He dropped onto the sofa and the whole thing groaned under his weight. I glanced over at him, then reached into my pocket. I set the phone on the desk between us, the one from the future. Want to make 1,000,000 yuan in 3 days? Dapeng choked on his cola so hard it almost came out of his nose. He coughed twice. Are you crazy? Even robbing a bank needs a plan. 1,000,000 in 3 days? SP business. He stopped coughing and just stared at me. Dapeng lived in internet cafes. Of course he knew what SP meant. 2008 was the wild age of mobile services. Ringtone downloads, weather texts, fortune messages, tiny services that made huge money. The two of us sat side by side in that small room, lit by nothing but our screens. My hands moved across the keyboard while I laid it all out. The problem is, the whole business is run by dangerous middlemen. Some of them are basically gangs. Dapeng shook his head. And the phone carriers are watching now too. The old scam codes can't get through their filters anymore, he said. I smiled. Who said anything about scamming? I powered up the second computer. My fingers settled on the keys, steady and light. We're building something people actually want, something they'll be happy to pay for. I turned and looked straight at him. Your cousin Erhu. He works at an SP company as a channel manager, right? And he has access to mobile billing codes. I let the grin show. Dapeng's eyes went round. How do you know that? I never said a word about him. I didn't explain. Call him right now. I don't care where he is. Tell him there's a deal that will multiply his monthly numbers by 10. Dapeng couldn't decide if I was crazy or 3 steps ahead of everyone, but he pulled a beat-up Nokia from his ripped jeans and started dialing. While he argued his cousin out of bed, I was already on to the next step. I picked up the AI phone and gave it quiet orders. The screen filled with text, target platforms, Symbian S60 J2ME. Behind me, Dapeng was sweating into the phone, trying to make his cousin believe him. The AI kept building. Core features appeared on the screen one line at a time. Code started writing itself faster than any team of programmers could dream of. A messaging app that worked on every phone with tricks to send messages almost for free. Out in the main hall, the cafe was full of gamers who had no idea what was being born in this back room. The AI reached into its future database and rebuilt everything to fit 2008 hardware. I watched the progress and let myself smile. The phone glowed bright, holographic light rising from the screen as it ran at full power. Every line of modern code was being translated into something a cheap phone from this era could run. Light pulsed from the screen as the project neared the finish line. In 2008, Nokia owned the phone market. People were still pressing tiny keys 3 times just to type one letter, and paying for every single text. 3 platform icons appeared on the screen. S60 J2ME MTK. All green, all ready. The app was called SoulLink, a messaging tool barely 200 kilobytes, built to change everything. My fingers were a blur on the keys. The code didn't come line by line, it poured onto the screen in whole blocks. 3 monitors filled with code, all built in seconds. I watched the AI tear through every wall Symbian had put up. System locks, security layers, all cracked and cleared. The door swung open and cheap alcohol flooded the booth. Erhu had arrived. This is the genius you told me about. I could hear the doubt before I even looked up. I didn't bother answering, I just held up the phone. Your phone runs S60 3rd version, right? Erhu blinked, then slowly pulled out his brand new Nokia. Turn on Bluetooth, I told him. He frowned, but did it, setting the phone on the table next to his drink. The file went through in seconds. SoulLink installed a jar. Install it. Then pick anyone from your contacts and send them a message. Erhu stared at his screen with narrow eyes. If this gives me a virus, I swear I'll break you both. I leaned back in my seat and let the threat float past me. The app finished installing before he could complain again. Erhu opened it and tried typing, just 2 letters on the tiny keys. His whole face changed. The app predicted the full sentence before he finished. He tried again, typing something rude this time. The prediction nailed it perfectly. He grinned in spite of himself. Top right corner, I said. Hit the crush test button. Erhu shrugged and tapped it. A pink screen filled with floating hearts appeared. Enter your crush's number and find out if they like you back. I brought him back to the cafe to see the full system up close. The moment he read the details, something shifted behind his eyes. This feature is insane, Erhu said. You built this to play with people's feelings. Without another word, he was already punching a girl's phone number into the crush test. The screen popped up. Sent. Want to see if she opened it? Unlock VIP for just 2 yuan. The yes button glowed bright pink. Erhu knew exactly what this was, a billing trap. He had worked in the business long enough to see it, but when he looked at me again, the doubt in his eyes was gone. Something else had taken its place. I could practically see gold coins reflected in them. This is just a demo. Give me the billing access and I'll launch it tonight, 50-50 split. He took a long drink from his can and called me kid, like I wasn't worth his time. Then he narrowed his eyes, switching into business mode. The channel is mine, he said, crossing his arms. And the code, I could pay someone to crack it. I pointed at the screen full of thick, protected code. It changes itself every 10 minutes. Without me, nobody can keep it alive. I stood up and turned toward the door. If you don't want the deal, I'll walk straight to Wangqiang. I'm sure he'd love to hear about this. Erhu's face went tight the moment he heard that name. I sat back down with a small smile and let the silence do the rest. He stared at me like he couldn't believe a teenager was doing this to him. I wasn't a teenager, not where it counted. 60-40, Erhu tried, leaning forward. I take 60, I still have to keep my contacts at the mobile company happy. I didn't budge, 50-50, and daily payments. Every noon, yesterday's share goes straight into my account, not 1 cent short. The room went completely silent. Just the hum of the computer fans. Erhu slapped his thigh. Fine, deal. If you really pull this off, I'll call you boss. He reached into his jacket. A small USB drive hung from his fingers by a red string. I took it, full billing access for every major carrier, all on one tiny stick. The next 6 hours disappeared. Dapeng sat in the corner, thumbs flying, posting ads to every forum and message board he could find. The promotional copy came from the AI, every headline designed to make young people click. Find out who has a crush on you. The secret confession tool everyone's using. By 7 a.m., the posts were live everywhere. While Dapeng pushed the marketing, I was still deep in code. Payment systems, billing codes, carrier connections. I wired them all into SoulLink. Cloud storage, network setup, backup servers, one piece after another. I borrowed outside server space as a relay and covered every weak point I could find. The first line of sunlight crept through the dirty curtains. My eyes burned, red lines running through them from a full night without rest. I pressed the last key. The screen read, Project SoulLink, now live. Downloads, 0. Version 1.0 was officially out in the world. Dapeng looked up with dark circles so heavy they seemed painted on. I pushed back from the desk and stretched until my shoulders cracked. Then I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Breakfast carts were steaming. Students in uniform hurried past on their way to school. A small smile crossed my face. Now we just had to wait. By 10 that morning, exams were over at Hicheng First High. Most students had gone home, but a few still hung around the classroom. In the back row, a boy named Zhang Wei was hiding his phone under the desk, grinning at the screen. The girl sitting ahead of him turned around. What are you smiling at? Zhang Wei held a finger to his lips. Let me show you something good. He tilted the phone toward her. Found this on a forum just now, it's amazing. It's called SoulLink. The typing is super fast and it has a crush test. That's fake, the girl said, but she was already leaning in. She took the phone from his hands before he could say another word. Two heads together, one small screen between them, warm light filling the classroom. I put in the class beauty's number from next door, Zhang Wei whispered. The phone showed a match result, and his face turned red with excitement. I paid 2 yuan to check the details, he said. It said she has long hair, and she likes white dresses. That's definitely her. The girl's heart skipped. She stared down at the phone in her hands. Slowly, her eyes moved across the room to a quiet boy reading by the window. Her cheeks went warm, and she closed her eyes for a moment. How do I download it? She asked, trying to sound casual. Bluetooth, Zhang Wei said. I'll send it to you right now. The file was only 200 kilobytes. It transferred before she could blink. She opened it, and her eyes lit up. The same scene was playing out across the city in over a dozen schools at once. Students, college kids, even young office workers, all finding that pink heart on their screens. In 2008, there was no app store. No single place to find and download software. Apps spread the old way, Bluetooth, infrared, and popular posts on phone forums. Phone to phone, person to person, desk to desk. The growth was slow at first, one user at a time. But once the word started spreading, it stuck. And the crush test was the hook that made sure nobody wanted to let go. The crush test hit every young person where it mattered most. Everyone had a secret crush, and now they had a way to find out if the feeling was the same. Who could say no to that? 2 yuan, the price of 1 cola, was all it cost for a tiny piece of hope. Noon. I was back in the VIP booth at Black Eagle, waiting. Dapeng had finally crashed, face down on the desk, drool and all. I sat watching the line graph on my screen, a warm bottle of cola beside me. I had been holding that can so long it felt like bathwater. Dapeng snored on while the numbers on my screen started to climb. Noon on the dot. The line shot straight up, 2,000 users, 5,000, 8,000, still climbing. My fingers hit the keyboard. 3,000 paid orders in one morning, over 6,000 yuan from Hicheng alone. As our post hit the top of every forum, traffic started flooding in from cities all over the country. Then the speaker on the desk screamed to life with a sharp alarm. Dapeng jerked awake and rolled right off the couch onto the floor. He stared at me, still half asleep. What happened? Not the police, I said. The traffic is exploding. My hands were already flying across the keyboard. Server CPU 99%. Not good. Every bar on the dashboard had turned red. The cheap server we rented was never built for traffic like this. It was frozen solid, not a single request getting through. Dapeng sat on the couch, staring at the monitors from across the room. Fan, what do we do? He asked. If it crashes, everyone will delete the app. I already had a plan. Swarm mode, I said. Turn it on. The screen confirmed, scanning the public network for unused computer power. Connection points lit up across the map. First hundreds, then over 1,000 machines. Every idle machine I could reach became part of our network, sharing the weight of all that traffic. Not exactly legal, but right now, rules could wait. The red warning vanished. CPU dropped to 30%, stable. Across Hicheng, in a corner office high above the city, Erhu was living a very different afternoon. Reports from his SP company sat in a pile on the desk, untouched. He was sweating in the heat, losing at a card game on his phone. Then his office door slammed open. A tech worker burst in out of breath. Boss, something big. Erhu barely glanced up. Calm down. What is it? The tech leaned on the table, gasping. The payment channel. The revenue went crazy. He slammed a thick stack of printed data onto the desk. 20,000 payment requests in 4 hours. And it's still climbing. Erhu shot to his feet so fast his chair fell over. He bent over the report, scanning every line. 20,000 orders at 2 yuan each, 40,000 yuan in 4 hours. His fist tightened at his side. At this rate, one full day would bring 240,000, a month over 7 million. When most people earned 2,000 a month, that number felt impossible. Erhu's eyes went dark with something hungry. He turned toward the window, but his mind was on the 50-50 deal he had signed with Lin Fan. Half of 7 million meant handing over 3 million a month to a high school kid. The channel was his. The company was his. Why split that kind of money with some teenager? Erhu's voice dropped low, and his face twisted into something ugly. Can you lock him out of the system? He asked the tech. Keep all the money on our side, just change the password. The tech's hands moved to the keyboard. We could tell him it was a data error, the tech said, or that mobile froze the account. He didn't type right away. I can do it, the text said carefully. If I change the access code, his app can't charge users anymore. All the money stays here. Something in his face said he knew this was wrong. But do it, Erhu snapped. Now. The money had taken over his brain completely. What's a kid gonna do about it, he said. Worst case, I throw him a few thousand and he disappears. The tech looked at him, then turned to his screen without another word. 2 in the afternoon. I was eating instant noodles at my desk when the revenue counter on the screen went quiet. Not slow, 0. Everything dropped to nothing. Dapeng's jaw fell open. Did the server crash again, he asked. I set down my chopsticks, pulled a tissue, and wiped my mouth slowly. There was no surprise in my eyes. If anything, I had been waiting for exactly this. The server is fine, I said, and my hands moved to the keyboard. Someone cut us off. I picked up my phone. The system log told me everything. Error 403, access denied. Erhu's SP company had changed the password. Dapeng's face went red. That bastard Erhu. He's trying to steal all of it. He was so angry he knocked my noodle cup off the desk. I'll go find him and break his teeth, Dapeng shouted. Sit down, I said, and the cold in my voice stopped him. He froze near the door. But Fan, that's tens of thousands of yuan. That's the money for Yuchu's dad, he said, and his voice cracked. His eyes were red, and not from tiredness. I know, I said quietly and stood up. I looked out the window at the streets below. The city glowed gold under the late afternoon sky. Greed is the best bait, I said, and Erhu just swallowed the whole thing. If he didn't cheat me first, I wouldn't have a reason to take him down. I turned back to the screen. A network map covered in red dots was already waiting. When I built SoulLink, I buried a trap inside the code, something nobody would ever notice. A logic bomb hidden so deep that not even a good programmer could find it. The trigger was simple. If the payment connection failed more than 3 times, the bomb goes off. My phone buzzed with a confirmation message. The bomb was already active. It locked every business channel that Erhu's company had, every single one. And it sent an anonymous report straight to China Mobile's main office, with 3 years of proof that his company had been charging people illegally. He wanted my money. I would take his entire business. At that very moment, Erhu was still sitting in his office, counting his future millions. Then every screen in the building flickered at once. Both monitors turned bright red. Critical system error. Every screen in Erhu's office showed the same thing. Red warning, system failure, core database destroyed. Then the red phone on his desk started ringing, the direct line from the mobile company's investigation department. Erhu picked it up with trembling hands. A cold voice came through the speaker. What the hell is your company doing? We received thousands of complaints and evidence that your company has been charging people illegally. It went straight to the government complaint office. If you want to go down, don't drag us with you. The line went dead, and Erhu's face turned white. His legs gave out and he hit the floor, his phone sliding across the ground. He lay there under his desk, staring at the red screens above. It's over, he whispered. That kid is the devil. 5 minutes later, my phone rang, Erhu's name on the screen. I let it ring twice before I picked up. I said nothing, just listened. Boss Fan, please, Erhu begged. I was wrong. Stop this, he said, his voice cracking. The investigators are already coming. If I go to prison, you lose your money too. Now he understood fear. I leaned back in my chair. You seemed pretty confident when you changed that password. I was stupid, Erhu said, and I heard the sharp crack of a slap. He was hitting his own face. I sat there and let him punish himself a while longer. The split stays at 50-50, I said. On the other end, Erhu was already offering me 70-80%. He didn't care anymore. Just pull back the report, he begged. I'll give you whatever you want, and unlock the system, please. First, you'll bring me 500,000 in cash, I said. 30 minutes, to the internet cafe. If you're short by 1 yuan, you can sit in prison and think about it. I'll do it right now, Erhu screamed. I'm going to the bank. He hung up and ran like his life depended on it. I put down my phone and turned to Dapeng, who was staring at me with his jaw hanging open. Get a bag ready, I said. I leaned back and looked out the window. The city had never looked this good. Half an hour later, Erhu appeared in the doorway, face red, shirt soaked, carrying a heavy black bag. I didn't move. He stared at me like I was something that shouldn't exist. He set the cash on the desk without a word, sweat dripping from his jaw. Dapeng's eyes went wide. The boy looked like he forgot how to breathe. 50 stacks of 100 yuan bills lined up in neat rows across the table. I didn't bother counting. I typed a few lines of code and pressed enter. Done. The system was back online. What Erhu didn't know was that the report had already been sent. A lighter version, just enough for a fine. I still needed his company running. After I sent Erhu away, I stared at the 500,000 on my desk. With today's earnings, I'd reach 1 million by tomorrow, enough to clear Yuchu's family debt. Then my phone buzzed again, an unknown number from Beijing. I picked up. Is this Mr. Q, the developer of SoulLink? Her voice was sharp and sure, the kind that never expects to hear the word no. We're from TX's investment team. Your product numbers are impressive. Interested in selling? My eyes narrowed. And if you refuse, she continued, we can make your product disappear from the entire internet by tomorrow. My grip on the phone tightened. I smiled. So it had already begun. I remembered this clearly from my past life. TX in 2008, the king of copycats. Any small product that caught their eye got the same 2 choices. Sell it to them for nothing, or watch them copy it and push it to their hundreds of millions of users until you were dead. That was the law of this era, and most people had no way to fight it. But I was not most people. If anything, I was looking forward to this. Go ahead, I said, but you might want to upgrade your firewall before tonight. I hung up, packed the 500,000 into the bag and threw it over my shoulder. What about the big company? Dapeng asked. Let them feel brave for a while, I said. I pushed the door open and stepped out with Dapeng behind me. The sun hit us warm and sharp. Big companies ruled this world with size, but real skill was the one thing they could never copy. The hospital corridors stretched long and cold under white lights. A doctor walked past without stopping, and the smell of cleaning chemicals hung in the air. Yuchu sat on a bench outside the emergency room, her head down, her hands pressed tight together. Her knuckles had gone white from the pressure. Mud from last night's rain still covered the bottom of her school uniform. She looked like she had nothing left. Nearby, her mother Lu Pingping leaned against the wall, crying softly and holding a thick stack of papers. Debt collection notices, dozens of them, thick enough to use as a brick. "Mom, don't cry," Yuchu said, her voice rough and dry. She sat still while her mother cried beside her. "We'll find a way." Her mother shook her head. "What way?" Liu Pingping looked up with swollen red eyes. "The surgery money, we managed to get enough for that. But the people we owe called again just now. They said if we don't pay by tomorrow, they're taking the house. This time our family is really finished," she whispered. Yuchu bit her lip until she tasted blood. Then footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor and she looked up. We came around the corner. I saw them right away. Yuchu on the bench, her mother crying beside her. Dapeng was breathing hard behind me, but I kept walking. I didn't slow down. Yuchu stood up. Her mother looked at us through her tears, confused. Yuchu's eyes went wide when she recognized me. I walked straight to the bench and stopped in front of them. Without a word, I pulled the bag off my shoulder. I dropped it on the bench, heavy and solid. The thud echoed through the quiet hallway. "This is 500,000, I said. I said it the way you'd mentioned the weather. Calm, simple, like it was nothing." Liu Pingping stopped crying. Both she and Yuchu stared at the bag. The old woman opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I pulled the zipper open, and rows of red 100 yuan bills filled the bag from edge to edge. Yuchu stared at the money like she was dreaming. 50 stacks of cash, packed tight in an old canvas bag sitting open in a hospital hallway. I looked at Liu Pingping. 500,000 in cash, auntie, I said. Pay the worst debts first, the ones where people are threatening you. Clear those before anything else. I took a smaller bundle out and placed it gently in her hands. The rest is for Uncle's recovery after surgery. Liu Pingping stood frozen, looking at the money in her hands, then at me, then back at the money. She couldn't say a word. Her hands were shaking against my collar. "Young man, where did you get this kind of money? You're not doing anything illegal, are you?" I smiled. "Relax, auntie. Every yuan is clean." I turned toward Yuchu, still frozen on the bench. I held out a small stack of bills. "What I borrowed yesterday, here's the first part back, with interest." Tears spilled before she could stop them. She stared at me like she was trying to see straight through me. "Lin Fan," she whispered. "Who are you, really?" She was close now, looking straight up at me. Just yesterday I was nobody, one more face in the back of the classroom. And today I had pulled out more cash than her family earned in years, like some kind of magic trick. I saw it in her eyes, not fear, but confusion so deep it hurt. I didn't have time to explain everything, and the truth would only scare her more. So I tried to keep it light. She looked up at me, one small fist near the strap of the bag. "Think of it as an investment," I said. "A future great physicist is worth a lot more than 500,000. She had no idea what I meant by physicist, but she understood the part that mattered, that I believed in her, and I wasn't going to walk away. With trembling hands, she reached out and took the bag from me. The weight surprised her. Her arms sank the moment she held it. 500,000 in cash is heavier than people think. Liu Pingping stood nearby watching everything. For the first time in days, the panic on her face had started to fade. I refused her offer to write a receipt and turned to leave. Dapeng fell into step beside me. The evening air hit us the moment we stepped outside. Dapeng looked like he was about to collapse. He dropped onto the front steps and sat there, breathing hard. "Boss," he gasped. "That was 500,000. You just handed it over, didn't even ask for a receipt." He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. I let him sit with that thought for a second. I lit a cigarette and looked out at the quiet street. Old habit from my past life. This young body still didn't love the taste. "That money will come back fast," I said. Dapeng looked at me confused. I held the cigarette loosely and met his eyes. "TX already has their eyes on us. Hasn't that been obvious?" "You were pretty bold with them on the phone," Dapeng muttered. I narrowed my eyes. "They've already made their move." I pulled out my phone. The numbers told the whole story. The smooth growth line had crashed 10 minutes ago. Active users cut in half. 50% gone, just like that. Dapeng leaned over to look at the screen. His face went white when he saw the numbers. I smiled to myself and opened the messaging app. I sent our download link in a group chat. The moment it went through, a red warning popped up, link blocked, security risk detected. They hadn't just slowed us down, they had erased every trace of us from their entire platform. I tried connecting directly to our server. The address sat there loading, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, nothing. DDoS. They were flooding our server with fake traffic to drown it. I tapped the ash off my cigarette. "Standard big company playbook," I said. "Block the links, kill the server, choke the traffic." Traffic is everything right now, I said. And they own the biggest social platform in the country. The second they block your links in their chat app, you're silenced. For a small team like us, this should mean death. Dapeng threw his hands up. "So that's it? We're finished?" "Or who just texted me too," he said, face twisted. "All the mobile data channels are cut off. He's losing it." I killed the cigarette and stood up. The harder they hit us, the more scared they are. Companies like TX, if they don't fear you, they just ignore you. Or they copy you. They only fight dirty when they can't do either. "Come on," I said. "Back to the internet cafe." Dapeng blinked. "For what?" I smiled, not a kind one. "Not to fight them. To send them a gift." Meanwhile, in Shenzhen, the TX corporate tower stood tall against the evening sky. On the top floor, a man named Wang Laowu sat behind a wide desk with his feet up, sipping coffee while his tech lead gave a report. "Their server is crushed," the tech lead said, smiling. "Every link blocked across our platform. Right now, they're dead." Wang Laowu took a slow sip of his coffee and said nothing for a moment. Then he set the cup down and stood. Just a high school kid who doesn't know his place. The corner of his mouth curled up. He looked like a man who had never once been surprised by anything. Thinks he can challenge us with some clever little app, the tech lead added, eager to agree. Wang Laowu leaned forward, both hands on the desk. In this industry, whoever we decide to kill, dies. The tech lead hesitated. There is one thing, sir. We tried to take apart their core code. Their smart suggestion feature, we can't find any local database for it. He pointed to a network map on the wall screen. It connects in real time to some kind of massive cloud system we've never seen. Our engineers tried to build a copy. Best result, 1/10 the speed. Wang Lao frowned. Then keep attacking the server. Don't stop. Tomorrow I want our own matching feature live, looking exactly like theirs. The tech lead bowed fast. Yes, sir. Wang Lao turned to the window and stared out at the city below. In his mind, this war was already over. Technology meant nothing against money and traffic. What he didn't know was that at that same moment, in a worn-out internet cafe far away, I was already sitting in front of 3 screens. My fingers moved fast across the keyboard. The VIP room was dark except for the blue glow of the monitors. This was my battlefield now. Green code filled the screen, not normal programming, but something much deeper, close to the language that machines actually speak. I was picking apart their security system piece by piece. My AI assistant displayed its findings on the phone beside me. TX's scanner used simple rules to detect threats, old, basic methods. I read every line of the report, and I kept typing. There it was, a gap. When their scanner hit a complex file, it would time out and skip the check entirely. Security software from 2008, still running on simple block and allow lists. As long as you wrapped your file in enough layers of protection, their whole defense could be walked right around. I saw the opening on my phone and knew exactly what to do. If they locked my front door, I'd go through the back. I turned to Dapeng. All those fake accounts we registered on the forums, log into every single one. Every platform, every account. Dapeng blinked. Every forum? What are we posting? A free update, I said. My mind was already 3 steps ahead. TX had just rushed out their own matching feature, a cheap copy they built in hours. It went live half an hour ago. I pulled it up on screen. They called it Chat Match, built directly into their messaging app with user profiles and matching scores. Same features as ours, completely free. That was how giants fought. Copy everything, charge nothing, and crush you with size alone. But I had been waiting for exactly this. Generate the code, I told the AI. Codename Trojan Apple. The plan was simple. I would build a small tool, a chat match accelerator. It would claim to crack the VIP features of TX's new matching system for free. See who secretly has a crush on you, no payment needed. The kind of thing people can't resist clicking. The AI started building the trap. My real code was hidden inside. This was the oldest trick in the book. Give people something they want and hide your weapon inside the gift. In 2008, regular users loved downloading hacks and cheat tools. Free shortcuts were impossible to resist. And the beautiful part, my tool actually worked. It really did crack some of TX's features. It used security holes that TX hadn't fixed yet. But under the surface, it carried something else entirely. The moment anyone ran my little tool, the code hidden inside would wake up, silently, invisibly, and go to work. It would install a tiny driver, only 20 kilobytes. It would not steal data or damage anything. Dapeng stared at me, confused. So what does it actually do? One thing, I said. Whenever someone plugs their phone into the computer to charge or copy music, the driver pushes a hidden service onto the phone. That service was Linksy, rebuilt from nothing, disguised as part of the phone's own system. I kept typing as I explained. The code would quietly rewrite the phone's system files and redirect every chat request meant for TX straight to my servers. Every user TX spent money to attract would end up on my platform instead. Dapeng's mouth fell open. That is insane. He sat there frozen, still trying to understand what I had described. It's called a technical counterattack, I said, and kept typing. I hit enter. The package was finished. It began spreading across the network. 10 minutes later, every hacker forum and software download site lit up with new posts. Chatmatch free crack version leaked. The top post already had hundreds of replies. Each post had a clean download link and step-by-step instructions. The tool actually worked. Real matching results, real names. People trusted it right away. Screenshots and reviews flooded every platform. The post went viral within the hour. The download counter passed 10,000 and kept climbing. Meanwhile, at TX headquarters in Shenzhen, an employee came running down the hallway. The tech lead burst through the office door with a grin on his face. Our chat match just passed 1 million visits, he announced. Wang Laowu leaned back and smiled, the smile of a man who believed he had already won. Nobody can beat us, he said. That kid, he's finished. He stood and spread his arms wide. Celebration dinner tonight, seafood for everyone on me. But the celebration never started. Something strange was happening on the monitoring screens. 2 hours later, the tech department's phones would not stop ringing. An engineer hurried over to the tech lead. Sir, something is wrong with our back-end data. We're showing millions of access requests, he said, but the database has 0 user records. Not a single one. The tech lead froze. What do you mean? Users are clicking our features, the engineer explained, but the data is disappearing, being sent somewhere else entirely. It's being redirected to another server, he said, his voice cracking. That's impossible, the tech lead said. Then the big monitoring wall lit up with a pattern no one expected. TX's traffic was dropping fast. Millions of connections were turning away from their own servers. All of it was flowing to a single IP address, shown clearly on the world map. They traced that address. The page it returned looked exactly like Chat Match, but at the very bottom, in tiny gray letters, it read, "Powered by Lin Fan. Thank you for the traffic, Mr. Penguin." Wang Lao's coffee cup hit the floor and shattered into pieces. His face had turned dark red, almost purple. "Hackers," he screamed, his whole body shaking. "Call the police, right now." We can't, sir, the tech lead said, nearly in tears. They didn't attack our servers. The users downloaded a driver themselves. They're sending us the traffic willingly. And the worst part, the tech lead added, pointing at his screen, the driver also kills viruses and speeds up their phones. Nobody wants to remove it. He bent over his keyboard, exhausted. The users would rather keep it than delete it. It's a poison apple, someone whispered, sweat running down his face. Once you take a bite, you can never spit it out. The red graph on screen confirmed it. All that traffic was leaving TX. Back at the cafe, I sat in front of my monitors and watched. The numbers had gone far beyond what I expected. 3 million daily active users. I read the number twice to make sure. TX had spent a fortune promoting Chat Match, and every cent of it ended up feeding my platform. The live counter was still ticking upward, 2.8 million and climbing. I let myself smile. Dapeng, how much money are we making this time? His voice was almost shaking. I looked at him. We're not making money this time. My eyes were on the screen, but my mind was somewhere else. The mobile internet age was coming, and I had 3 million users already in my hand. What we're building next is not a small app anymore, I said. I walked to the whiteboard and picked up the marker. I wrote one word. VX. I was going to end the age of text messages right here in 2008. If TX wanted a war, I would bring it to their front door. I would tear out the roots of their empire. My hands returned to the keyboard. This time I was going after their core messaging itself. I could see every step ahead, every date, every line of code that needed to exist. I stood and pulled out my phone. Load the Instant Messaging 2.0 framework, I told the AI. Enable voice transfer protocol. The AI confirmed. It was pulling voice compression technology from 3 years in the future and adapting it. On the monitor, the AI processed everything, fitting the code for the slow mobile networks of 2008. Then a button appeared on the phone screen. Big, blue, simple, hold to talk. It was the summer of 2008, June 28th. Outside, the world had no idea what just happened. People walked the streets, shopping, talking, living their normal lives. The Olympic torch was passing through the city, and crowds lined the roads to watch. Every shop played the same welcome song. Every TV screen showed the Beijing countdown. At the stock exchange, investors were crying over numbers that kept dropping. And here in Hicheng, behind the neon sign of the Black Eagle Internet Cafe, inside the VIP room behind a locked door, Dapan was staring at the screen with food still in his hand. Fanji, is this thing broken? His bun dropped onto the desk. He did not even notice. The graph on screen was no longer climbing, it was going straight up. Data was flooding through the servers faster than we could read it. 5 million installs in a single night. But the number I cared about most was the voice packet data, over 2 million transmissions and still rising. I leaned back and let the smile stay on my face. My body was running on nothing, but my brain had never felt more awake. Dapeng sat across from me, serious for once in his life. I reached for the phone on the table. The screen showed a big blue microphone button. I held my finger on it. Hey fatty, time to lose some weight, I said into the phone. 1 second later, Dapeng's phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up, no ringtone, no download bar, just a small voice bubble with a red dot. He tapped it without thinking. My voice came out of his phone, clear, clean, like I was standing right next to him. The screen showed my name and a green audio bar playing the message I had just recorded. He looked at me, then at the phone, then at me again. What is this? I didn't answer any call. It's called a voice message, I said. It uses mobile data, not phone minutes. No call needed. Only data. Dapeng's eyes went wide. He nearly fell off his chair, leaning forward. Then how many messages could you send for 1 cent? I was already typing again. Right now, a data plan costs 5 yuan for 30 megabytes. You could send thousands. My compression algorithm could squeeze a 10-second voice clip down to just 4 kilobytes. 30 megabytes of mobile data meant roughly 7,500 voice messages. Dapeng's mouth fell open. How many? He jumped out of his chair so fast he took it with him and crashed to the floor. A text cost 1 cent each. 7,500 would be 750 yuan. In 2008, that number hit different. People picked every word in a text message carefully just to save a few cents. They shortened words, cut sentences down to codes only their friends could read. Long-distance calls cost so much that people would rather walk across town than dial. And here, behind the neon sign of the Black Eagle Cafe, I had just made all of that worthless. My eyes went sharp. Has Chiwan figured out what's happening? Dapeng pulled himself off the floor and went straight to the computer to check. His hands moved fast across the keyboard, pulling up forum after forum. Their chat app keeps crashing, he said, eyes locked on the screen. Every forum is full of angry users, but people are also posting about Lingzi. The posts were everywhere. Users were calling Lingzi's voice feature a walkie-talkie for your phone, better than anything else out there. I shook my head. Not enough. People were curious right now, but curiosity fades fast. I needed them to feel like they could not live without Lingzi. Outside the window, the first light of morning was already showing. I had not slept at all. I picked up my phone and gave the AI its next order. Start the viral spread, Plan B. The phone loaded for a second, then confirmed the new strategy. Strategy name, Voice Drift Bottle. A user records a message and sends it floating out into the network. Someone else picks it up, hears the voice inside, and if they want, they start talking to a stranger. 10 years from now, every social app would copy this trick until people got sick of it. But in 2008, I turned back to the computer and added one more thing. Yuchu's phone number straight to the whitelist. Every message she sent would reach me first, with no delay. Right then, a soft knock came at the VIP room door. Who's that? Dapeng yelled. Our overnight session isn't up yet. A small, nervous voice answered from the hallway. It's me. Dapeng opened the door, and there was Yuchu standing right outside. Morning sunlight fell on her hair. Her face still looked a little pale. Dapeng almost said something rude, but caught himself just in time. He swallowed whatever it was and stepped aside to let her in. I heard her footsteps and turned my head. She paused at the smell, smoke and stale noodle cups. She wrinkled her nose a little, but she didn't say a word. Her eyes moved past the cables and empty wrappers on the floor and landed straight on me. I met her gaze. Lin Fan, she said quietly. She stood there in her school uniform, a bag hanging from one hand, looking like she belonged in a completely different world from this room. That sharp edge I had been running on all night just melted away. I stood up. Why are you here? Doesn't someone need to stay at the hospital? I reached for a chair to give her, but every seat was buried under instant noodle cups. My mom is there watching him, she said. Dad's surgery went well. The doctor said we got him there just in time. She looked at me and added softly, that night, calling the ambulance that fast saved him. She placed a lunchbox on the desk and opened it. Inside was warm rice porridge with red dates and a few steamed buns. The steam rose slowly into the cold room. I came to bring you breakfast, she said. Then her voice got quieter. She reached into her skirt pocket and pulled out a bank card. There's 50,000 left on this. The surgery didn't cost all of it, so I'm returning what's left. She held the card out to me. I know it's not enough to repay you. The rest I'll work and pay it slowly with interest. I looked at the card but didn't reach for it. I knew Yuchu. She hated owing people anything. If I refused, she would only feel worse. Fine, I said, and took the card from her hand. I dropped it next to the keyboard without a second look. But forget about working some random job to pay me back. I leaned back and let myself smile. I actually need someone right now. She blinked, caught off guard. She looked around the messy room. Need someone, like a manager? Across the room, Daepang choked on his porridge and sprayed it across the table. I held back a grin. Not a manager, chief experience officer. I picked up the phone with Lindsay installed and handed it to her. The big blue microphone button sat right in the center of the screen. Hold this and talk. She took the phone slowly, holding it close, not sure what to expect. She pressed the button and held it down. Lin Fan is a big dummy, she said into the phone. The old Nokia screen showed the recording bar filling up. She let go. A soft chime played, and her face went red. She couldn't even look at me. A second later, the speakers on my desk lit up. Her voice came through, perfectly clear. Lin Fan is a big dummy. Her eyes went wide. She looked at the phone, then at the speakers, then back at the phone. How is that possible? It's not a recording, I said, looking her in the eyes. It's the future. I held up the phone so she could see the screen. From now on, you can use this to talk to me anytime, anywhere. No phone bill, no word limit. When you want to cry, when you want to laugh, just press the button and let me hear it. Something crossed her face that I hadn't seen before. In a time when everyone was too busy just surviving, I had just given her a way to reach me whenever she needed. No cost, no limits. She sat there, trying to find the right words. She turned to look at the data on my screens. You built this? Just finished it, I said, keeping my smile easy. Not many people using it yet, that was a lie. 5 million people were already on it. So I need you to help me test it. If this thing makes money, your debt is gone. But the second I said it, a red warning box appeared on the screen behind us. This time, it was not an attack from Yuan. It was a legal notice from the mobile carrier. Our app was running an illegal VoIP phone service. If we didn't stop, they would cut our internet and call the police. Daeping's face went white. Fanji, he said, voice shaking. The carriers are coming after us. Text messages and voice calls were how the carriers made all their money. My free voice messages were cutting straight into their profits, and they had noticed. Yuchu looked at me, worry written all over her face. Is there trouble? I didn't answer her question. I just picked up my phone and started dialing. Not a trace of worry on my face. The number on the screen had an international country code. The name at the top read Wang Hihong, the founder of HTC. She was in the middle of preparing the launch of the world's first Android phone, the G1. I didn't have her private number, of course, but the AI did. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. A sharp, tired voice answered in English. Who is this? I switched to English without a pause. Director Wang. Director Wang. I'm calling from China. I have an app that can make your G1 beat the iPhone 3G on launch day. But I have a small problem. The Chinese carriers want to shut me down. 3 seconds of silence. Then her voice came back, cold. I don't know you, and the G1 is classified. I looked at my phone screen where the AI had already pulled up every detail of the G1, the slide-out keyboard. It runs Android 1.0, I said, calm and steady, and I already know everything about it. What if I told you, I said, settling back in the VIP chair, that I can make the G1 the first phone in the world to support free voice messages? 2 minutes into the call, she had not hung up. 5 million active users, Director Wang, already in my hands, ready to move on to your platform. I let the grin spread just enough for her to hear it in my voice. Would any carrier really dare shut down a company that just became a strategic partner of Google and HTC? I was gambling, nothing in my hands but words and future knowledge. Gambling that HTC was desperate enough to win the smartphone race that they would listen to a stranger from China. And then I heard it, her breathing faster now. She was interested. On the other end of the line, Wang Hihong stared at the phone. 5 million users, she repeated quietly. Check China's internet traffic yourself, I said. The numbers don't lie. All I need is an HTC developer license and 1 strategic investment. In return, I hand you the entire Chinese youth market. 5 minutes later, I hung up. On the monitor beside me, Solink's traffic map lit up across all of China. She had not said yes, but she had not said no either. I snapped my fingers at Daeping. Close that legal notice, I said. Forget about it. But what if the police come? Daeping asked. I looked at him. They won't. I took the bank card Yuchu had tried to return earlier and slid it back into her hand. The carrier executives will get a call from HTC very soon. And right before the Olympics, nobody will dare shut down an international tech partnership. That was the real weapon, looking at 2008 with 16 years of knowledge from the future, borrowing the power of giants who did not even know I existed yet, to fight a war only I could see coming. Yuchu watched him from across the room. The quiet boy who used to walk behind her without a word. When had he changed this much? He felt far away from her now and somehow closer than ever. When had he become someone who could shake the world with a single phone call? Lin Fan, she said, standing up straight. I want to join. CEO, CFO. I don't care what the job is. I want to be there when you win. That caught me off guard. I blinked, and then I smiled. Welcome aboard, boss lady. Her face turned red all the way to her ears. She glared at me, but she did not take it back. Then my phone buzzed on the desk. The AI had sent an emergency alert. Large-scale capital movement detected. The city commercial bank was forcing a sale of assets. The target was the Chengnan Building Materials Factory under the name Shen Guoqiang, Yuchu's father. The buyer's name was tied to Zhao Changhe, and the sale price was only 30% of what the land was worth. The smile died on my face. Zhao Changhe. I knew that name. In my past life, he was the man who destroyed Yuchu's family. He had cornered her father, forced him to sign away the factory for almost nothing. Then he threw every worker out and took the land for himself. He turned it into apartment buildings. That one stolen deal made him the richest man in the city. And the same thing was about to happen again, right now in this timeline. I turned to look at Yuchu. She was still glowing from the joke, the warm feeling, the shy smile. She had no idea what was coming. Yuchu. My voice dropped lower than I meant it to. I grabbed the canvas bag. Over 400,000 yuan was still inside. The porridge was great, but we need to go right now. Go where? She asked. To take your family's factory back and to deal with someone who should have been stopped a long time ago. The Red Star Building Materials Factory sat in the south end of the city, a dying relic from the 90s. Today its gates were blocked by 2 black sedans, and behind them stood rows of guards with riot shields. The yard was full of unsold cement pipes and steel bars. Hundreds of workers had gathered on the street outside, and every one of them was angry. Guards in uniform stretched yellow tape across the entrance and held their shields in a tight line, blocking everyone out. We haven't been paid in 3 months, a young worker screamed, gripping a wrench. Zhao Changhe, you thief, an older one shouted. That's Director Shen's life savings. You can't just take everything. The crowd surged forward, tools raised, but one man with a wrench was nothing against a wall of shields. The guards pushed back, and the crowd stumbled. An old worker stood at the tape line, jaw tight, fist shaking, angry enough to fight, too weak to win. Past the security line, inside the factory yard, 2 men sat across from each other at a cheap folding table. One had his hair slicked back tight, a cigar between his fingers, the easy posture of a man who already knew he had won. Zhao Changhe, the boss of Changhe Real Estate. He watched the old man across from him with zero respect. The old man facing him was Yuchu's uncle, the only family member still standing. His forehead was drenched in sweat. The pen in his hand shook so badly it barely stayed between his fingers. Director Zhao, the price is too low, the old man begged. 200 million, the land alone is worth more than that. And Guoqiang is still in the hospital. Please. Zhao blew a slow ring of smoke. Stop wasting my time. Shen Guoqiang owes the bank 1.8 million. The payment is due today. If nobody signs, the court seals this place tomorrow. It goes to auction, and if nobody bids, you get nothing and still owe every cent. But sign now, he said, leaning forward, and that 200,000 in cash is yours to walk away with. He dropped a black briefcase onto the table and cracked it open. Stacks of red bills packed tight inside. The old man's face crumbled. He had nothing left to fight with. His pen touched the contract. The tip shook, but it started to move. Stop. My voice split through the crowd like a crack of thunder. The workers near the gate spun around, confused. Zhao stood up from the table, frowning toward the noise. Our taxi had barely stopped before we threw the doors open. The 3 of us ran straight for the factory gates, me, Dapeng, and Yuchu. The old man's hand froze above the paper. His eyes went wide. Yuchu saw everything. The guards, the yellow tape, the table. Her uncle with a pen in his shaking hand. Uncle, she screamed. What are you doing? This factory is everything Dad built. How can you sell it for 2 million? Zhao stepped out from the warehouse and looked her over slowly. So this is the Shen family's girl. The look in his eyes made something twist in my stomach. Yuchu clutched her collar, trying to steady herself. Good timing, Zhao said with a thin smile. Father's debt, daughter pays. If he can't sign, you can. He waved his hand, and a guard grabbed Yuchu by the arm. They shoved her down onto the table face first. She tried to fight back, but the guard held her there. Let her go. My voice came out so cold I barely recognized it. I walked forward through the crowd, one slow step at a time. Something in my face must have changed because everyone around me went quiet. The workers parted for me without a word, opening a straight path to the gate. Zhao narrowed his eyes. And who are you? He looked me up and down, cheap clothes, no car, just a student. In his mind, I was nothing. I did not answer. I walked straight to the guard holding Yuchu and locked my hand around his wrist. Something cracked. The guard screamed. His wrist bent at an angle it was never meant to bend. He fell to his knees, letting go of Yuchu instantly. I pulled Yuchu behind me and turned to face Zhao. Then I wiped my hand on my sleeve like I had touched something dirty. Kid, Zhao growled through his teeth. Tax fraud from the very beginning, I said, keeping my back straight and my voice flat. Bribes to grab land deals. 3 wrongful deaths tied to your name. I read out every line the AI had found, calm, steady, like I was reading from a report. My voice was not loud, but in the silence of that factory yard, everyone heard every word. For the first time, something cracked behind Zhao's eyes. Get him, he hissed. And a dozen guards with batons closed in around us. Dapeng's legs were shaking so hard I could see it, but he picked up a brick from the ground and stood at my side. Stay back, Dapeng shouted. I know how to fight. Nobody believed him, but nobody moved forward either. I reached behind me and pulled a thick stack of documents out of my backpack. I walked right past the guards and dropped the papers onto the table in front of Zhao. You had a nice plan, boss Zhao, I said with a small smile. I pressed my hand flat on the acquisition agreement, official stamp and all. Too bad your plan just died. Zhao snatched one of the pages, his face twisting with anger. He was about to tear it in half, but then he read what was on it, and his hand stopped. It was not a legal contract. It was a geological survey map and an equipment valuation report. His eyes lifted from the paper and moved slowly across the factory yard. The paper crumpled in his fist. I walked him to the warehouse and back. 3 massive machines sat under old cloth covers untouched for years. I pointed deeper into the building. Those are Siemens CNC machines imported from Germany in the 90s. No one here knew how to use them. On the second-hand market, each one is worth at least $1.5 million. Sweat ran down Zhao's temple. He had nothing to say. You were never rushing to buy this factory for building materials, I said. Underneath this ground there is a sand deposit nobody has on record. You came here to mine it. His face drained of color. His fist was shaking at his side. This was the one secret he had kept from everyone, even Yuchu's father. The AI had matched geological databases with satellite scans weeks ago. I knew this land better than the man trying to steal it. Who are you? Zhao asked. His voice had changed. I am the one taking this factory, I said. I knelt down and unzipped the black canvas bag I had brought. 500,000 yuan, stacked tight, clean, and very real. The workers in the back went silent. It was not enough for everything, but the statement was clear. I stood and turned to face the crowd of workers. Zhao offered you 2 million and planned to throw every one of you out afterward. I do not have that kind of money yet, but this factory is not for sale. Your wages will be paid within 3 days, and we are done making concrete pipes. From now on, we build technology. The workers stared at me. A kid talking about high-tech in a cement factory, nobody was buying it, but they had watched me break a guard's wrist. They had heard me read Zhao's crimes out loud. I stood on a wooden crate above them, and no one laughed. An old worker in a yellow hard hat stepped forward. I know this kid, he said. Director Shen once paid for his schooling. I trust him. That one voice changed everything. The whole crowd shifted, and suddenly Zhao was the outsider. Zhao bit down on his cigar and scanned the faces around him. Every worker stared back at him with the same look. Get out. A big man with a wrench and a steel pipe took one step toward Zhao's guards. From above, it was clear. Zhao's dozen men stood in the center of a circle made of hundreds of workers. Zhao bent forward, grinding his teeth. He knew what would happen if this turned into a real fight. He crushed his cigar under his shoe. Fine, you win today. But at the gate, he stopped. This factory owes the bank 1.8 million, due tomorrow at 5. If you cannot pay, the court will shut this place down for me. He turned and walked toward the cars. I watched Zhao and his men leave through the rusted factory gates without looking back. The moment they were gone, the workers exploded, cheering, shouting, pumping their fists. Yuchu leaned against my arm, her legs barely holding her up. Lin Fan, 1.8 million plus wages. I turned and looked at the factory under the sunset. Old red bricks, a rusted gate, a faded sign. Everyone else saw a ruin. I saw my first real base. Those 3 German machines combined with the AI's programming ability could build parts that no Chinese factory had ever produced. With my hand on the controls and the AI feeding instructions in real time, the cutting heads could carve metal at a level of precision only foreign factories had ever reached. And from this workshop, China's first true smartphone would be born. I reached over and put my hand on Yuchu's head. Do not worry, I said. I looked at the sky going orange above the factory rooftops. Tonight, someone will come to us and they will bring money. Yuchu blinked up at me. Who? Someone from Alibaba, maybe. Or Baidu. They have already noticed what I built online. We walked through the factory gate together. Somewhere out there, the biggest players in the internet world had a new problem they could not explain. Take me to those machines, I said, and stepped inside the factory floor. I stopped in front of the biggest CNC machine. Its steel body still looked solid after 15 years of sitting in the dark. In my mind, I called out to the AI, scan the machine's structure, generate a repair plan, and prepare a parts list for the prototype. My hand pressed flat against the cold metal surface. Blue light spread across the machine as the AI scanned every internal part. The results came back. The core was intact. With some work, it could still cut titanium alloy. I kept my hand on the metal. From today, I was not just writing code. I was building things with my own hands. Night fell over the Red Star factory. Outside, weeds, broken rails, and dead silence. But inside Workshop 3, the lights were on and steam was rising. The machines had not stopped since I powered them up. I stood at the CNC console wearing a work vest covered in machine oil, safety glasses pushed up on my forehead. Every cut, every angle, every tiny measurement, I watched all of it. Coolant sprayed across the spinning blade as it bit into the metal. Sparks burst where the cutter met the titanium sheet. Dapeng and the old foreman stayed with me through the night. The air was thick with the smell of hot metal. That is the 5th sheet you have ruined, Dapeng said, eating noodles in the corner. This stuff costs hundreds per kilogram. He was right. The floor was already piled with failed frames, every one a waste of expensive alloy. I pulled off my glasses and held up the latest piece. Still not accurate enough. The phone frame looked close to perfect, but close was the same as wrong. I measured it with a caliper, off by 0.05 of a millimeter. If I put this kind of trash onto a phone, the gap between the frame and the screen would be wide enough to slide a bank card through. I need every edge to fit perfectly, one solid piece, no seams. Dapeng rolled his eyes. 0.05 of a millimeter, and you call it trash? I set the frame back into the machine and started adjusting the settings. Every Nokia on the market right now has a loose plastic shell. That is Nokia. What we are making is art. I tossed the failed frame onto the scrap pile. Again, it was July 2008. On every street corner, people still typed on 9-key phones. The iPhone 3G had just shown up overseas. I read the news at the internet cafe and studied every detail. China had not seen anything like it yet. Nokia still owned the entire market here. Plastic cases, tiny screens, physical keypads, that was the world people lived in. The phone I was building, the Kidian 1, would be years ahead of all of them. Full metal frame. A touchscreen with no keyboard. A design that did not exist anywhere on Earth yet. Yuchu had been working in the lab, testing touch display solutions the AI had designed. No buttons at all, just glass you touch with your finger. But making it real needed money, and money was something I was running out of. 500,000 was long gone. Even the money I had squeezed out of Urhu was down to nothing. These machines ate money like fire eats paper. Cutting tools, titanium sheets, coolant, every single day burned through tens of thousands. Yuchu had taken over the account books. I heard her pen stop moving. She looked up from the ledger with worried eyes. At some point, she had become the factory's bookkeeper. No one asked her to. She just did it. At this rate, she said, we have to stop everything by tomorrow afternoon. There is only 20,000 left, and the workers' wages still have not been paid. I wiped the oil off my hands with a rag and looked out the window. Do not panic, I said. The tool for making money had been sitting right in front of me this whole time. I walked to the desk in the corner of the workshop where a row of computers tracked Lingxi's backend data, 8 million daily active users, and the revenue line read exactly 0. I had kept it that way on purpose. No ads, no paid services, not a single yuan collected. I sat down and placed my fingers on the keyboard. Activate the Hive algorithm, I said. The phone screen lit up. Command confirmed loading personalized recommendation engine version 1. In 2008, the internet was a place where people had to search for everything themselves. If you wanted news, you went to a big website like Sina or Soho and dug through hundreds of links to find what you wanted. If you wanted forum posts, you went to Tinya and scrolled through pages all night. Tonight we push a new version of Lingxi, I said. Dapeng walked over to watch. I typed code while I talked. We are adding a new feature called Candian. Candian? Dapeng frowned. Is that like a news page? The corner of my mouth lifted. Not exactly. It shows you whatever you want to see. Dapeng looked confused. What I was building that night was the first version of a recommendation system that would one day change how the entire world read the internet. The technology of 2008 could not match what I remembered from 16 years ahead, but the AI could already read the keywords in every Lingxi conversation and understand what each user cared about. Say a user spent every day talking to his friends about basketball on Lingxi. The next time he opened the app, a headline about Kobe scoring 40 points would be waiting for him. He would click it, read the whole thing, and the system would learn even more about what he liked. Or say a girl spent her nights chatting about heartbreak and bad relationships. Her feed would fill up with articles like 3 types of men you should never date and late-night thoughts about the one who left. Every user would end up trapped inside their own little world of content, seeing only what they already liked. In the future, people would call this the information bubble. In 2008, nobody had even imagined it. I pressed enter and leaned back. The update was live. In Beijing's Zhongguancun Tech District, a glass tower held the offices of one of China's biggest news websites. Inside, a man named Editor Zhang sat at his desk, reviewing articles for a special Olympics feature. His screen exploded with messages, pop-ups stacking on top of each other, all from his tech team. Boss, something is wrong. Our mobile traffic is crashing. Editor Zhang typed back fast. Crashing? How is that possible? The Olympics are coming. Everyone is reading news right now. The tech lead's reply came seconds later. It is real. Since 8 p.m., our mobile traffic dropped by 1/3, and users are not staying as long either. Editor Zhang's face went stiff. He typed back one order, find out where the traffic went. Half an hour later, the tech lead sent a screenshot. Zhang opened it on his computer. It showed a phone app called Lingxi, clean, simple, mostly a chat tool. But inside it was a new tab called Candian, and the headlines were impossible to ignore. The 2008 housing crash, secrets revealed. Exclusive photos you were not supposed to see. Zhang leaned forward and studied the headlines one by one. Then he sat back and crossed his arms. Cheap garbage, he thought. This kind of trash can steal our users, he said out loud. But he was curious. He picked up his own phone and opened Lingxi. He tapped an article about stock market secrets just to test it. When he finished, his finger slid down the screen without him thinking about it. A new article appeared, 3 signs the big players are shaking the market. Then another, how small investors can protect themselves in a crash. Zhang pulled the phone away from his face. How does this thing know I lost money in stocks? The swipe to refresh felt addictive. Every new screen was a surprise, like pulling a prize from a box. You never knew what would come next, and somehow every article felt chosen just for you. Without realizing it, Editor Zhang had been sitting in his high-rise office, staring at a tiny 2-inch phone screen for over 2 hours. The phone burned hot in his hands. The screen dimmed, battery almost dead. He set the phone down and stared at nothing. He had never seen a product like it. It never asked you to search or choose. It just kept feeding you exactly what you wanted, one article after another, until you could not put it down. The age of news websites is finished, Zhang whispered to the empty room. Back at the Red Star factory, the numbers came in faster than I expected. Dapeng was glued to the back-end monitors, barely able to sit still. The numbers are insane, Dapeng said. Completely insane. He spun his chair toward me. Fanji, average time per user jumped from 15 minutes to 45. On top of that, the phone line for advertiser questions had not stopped ringing since morning. I had built a simple rule: for every 10 articles a user scrolled past, 1 ad would appear in the feed. Not the old-style banner ads that everyone hated and ignored. These ads looked like regular content, and the purchase rate was enormous. What is the current ad price? I asked. 5 yuan per 1,000 views, Dapeng said. And it is already going up. I did the math in my head. 8 million users, each refreshing about 20 times. That was 160 million ad views per day. Even if only half of those loaded an ad, the daily revenue came to about 1.6 million yuan. Yuchu's voice shook when she read the number on the calculator. She held it in both hands and looked up, as if the number could not be real. 1 month of this is 50 million, she whispered. 50 million a month from an app that was earning 0 just yesterday. I looked across the table at Yuchu. The money problem that kept us up last night was gone. No more saving on materials, I told her. Order the best 5-axis machines available. Run them 24 hours a day. And rent the abandoned warehouse next door, I added. The old foreman was already listening from the doorway. Yuchu wrote it all down without pausing. We need to build a dust-free assembly room. She looked up at me and something in her eyes was different. I could see it. That look used to be simple trust. Now it was something more. She stood up and faced me. Lin Fan, how much is inside your head? Seriously, Yuchu said. What are you carrying around in there? I smiled and tapped the side of my head. Then I pointed at the phone in my pocket. The future. The moment the word left my mouth, the phone in my pocket shook hard. Not a call, not a message. It was a sharp pounding alarm, the kind that means something is very wrong. I pulled it out fast. The foreman behind me saw my face change in an instant. The screen was covered in red warning icons. Core power module voltage failure. Battery health dropping fast down to 15%. The charging cable had done permanent damage. It was not made for this phone. Disconnect power immediately, the screen demanded. My hands froze over the blueprints on the desk. This phone was not just a phone, it was the AI. My biggest advantage in this life was not my knowledge. It was this device, and it was dying. What is wrong? Yuchu asked softly. She had already noticed. Yuchu had seen my face change, but I could not explain. I stared at the phone in my hand, and something cold spread through my chest. Not even when 30 security guards surrounded me at the TX building did I feel this kind of fear. The screen showed a heart monitor, but it was the phone's own heart that was failing. Power chip damaged. Heartbeat unstable. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Rain pounded the empty factory yard outside. Lightning cracked the sky above the Red Star building. The summer of 2008 brought many storms, but tonight the thunder felt different, heavy and close. Light from Workshop 3 spilled through its door and into the rain. Inside, every machine had gone quiet. Not a single motor running. I had locked myself in the clean room at the back of the factory, alone with the workbench and the dying phone. A multimeter, a soldering iron, and the phone's exposed parts lay in front of me. The future phone, titanium body 16 years ahead of everything in this world, now lay flat on the workbench with its screen completely dark. Only a tiny red light in the corner still blinked slow and faint, like a dying pulse. 4%. Sweat ran down the side of my face. I held it up one more time. 2 words on the screen, cannot charge. This was a 2024 prototype. Its battery used technology that would not be invented for another 16 years. And every charger I had used in 2008, no matter how much I modified it, was still sending power that this phone saw as poison. The error flashed again. Months of wrong voltage and mismatched signals had finally burned out the chip that controlled all power inside. Now it refused to accept anything. In a few minutes, it would shut down forever. The AI's face on the screen already looked weak, almost sad. Once the phone died, the AI could lose its memory and never start again. The door behind me opened and the foreman stepped in. All the operating system code, the stock charts, every technical drawing I had stored, would be locked forever inside a dead piece of metal. I bent over the laptop, searching for any way in. I slammed my fist on the desk. Damn it. I had put everything on this phone. I had trusted it completely. I thought I was in control. But my greatest weapon had always been a future tool running on borrowed power. And the power was about to run out. Then the door opened again, and Yuchu walked in. She was carrying a heavy black toolbox in both hands. Stay out, I snapped. I grabbed the phone and stepped back. I held it against my chest. The AI's faint eyes glowed through my fingers, but Yuchu did not flinch. She closed the door and walked straight to the bench. You are shaking, Lin Fan, she said quietly. She reached over and placed her hand on mine, the one holding the soldering iron. Her fingers were cool and steady. Something in her touch pulled me back from the edge. The foreman stood by the door, watching us both. I took a long breath and set everything down on the table. It is finished, I said. The power chip is burned. The battery is locked. Nothing from this era can fix it. When the last drop of power ran out, everything I had built would end with it. Yuchu picked up the phone carefully and turned it over in her hands. The screen showed a hologram of the phone's own circuits. She did not know where it came from, but she could see it was far beyond this time. If it runs on circuits, it still follows physics, she said. Do not rush. Let me look. Her voice was calm and sharp. She laid the phone down and picked up a probe. She pointed at the circuit display, tracing connections with the tip of her tool. Precision instruments lined the table. I stared at her. Something shifted in my head, and without thinking, I stepped aside. Yuchu pulled on anti-static gloves. Her eyes narrowed with total focus. She pressed test probes gently against the phone's ports, careful and exact. The foreman and I watched from behind. Her hands moved with the confidence of someone twice her age. She connected the phone to her monitoring equipment. The voltage jumps are extreme, she said. Internal resistance is way too high. Data filled the screen, wave patterns, numbers, error codes. It is blocking all outside current, she said, because it thinks every power source will damage it. This is a safety lock. It shut itself down to survive. That hit me. She was right, and I had been too scared to see it. The screen flashed red. Software locked. The AI's face was trapped behind the warning. Yuchu looked up at me. Then we trick it. If it thinks normal power is dirty, she said, then we build it a clean signal, a pure wave that looks exactly like its original charger. She pointed at the messy pattern on the screen. Like feeding a baby, she explained. You cannot give it raw food, you have to soften it first. I looked at her across the table. You mean we copy the original charging signal? I can do it, I said. The plan was already forming in my head. Yuchu started pulling parts from her toolbox. tiny electronic components she had been collecting from her school's physics lab. We sat side by side. She handled the hardware, I handled the software. We barely needed to talk. "You write the code," she said. "Try to unlock the power chip through the software." I pulled the laptop close and typed as fast as I could, line after line of commands trying to force a door open. Meanwhile, she was building a temporary power supply and an outside heart for a dying machine, her eyes locked on the board. Nothing else in the room existed for her. "We have about 5 minutes," she said, glancing at the battery. The red icon was still dropping, 3%. Every second felt like a countdown to nothing. I plugged the phone into the laptop with a data cable. The screen flickered. The data line still worked. A black command window opened on my screen. We still had a path into the system. I typed the first command, connect PMIC debug port. The reply came back in red, access denied. I tried another route and another. Every single path was blocked. "Wake up," I whispered to the phone. "Open the door for me." The screen flickered once, barely. The AI was still alive in there, fighting. The display read, system protection active. Behind me, Yuchu was soldering at full speed, safety glasses on, bent over the circuit board. The tip of the iron touched a joint, and a thin line of smoke rose under the lamp. Sweat covered her forehead and loose hair stuck to her face, but she did not stop for even half a second. The foreman leaned in. "If I were this battery, I would need a 120 Hz pulse signal to wake up." He placed the last small parts onto the board with steady hands while Yuchu guided the wires. The signal monitor showed the wave pattern, getting cleaner but still not clean enough. "Bigger filter," Yuchu called out. "Is it ready?" I asked. My fingers were almost burning across the keyboard. "I am trying to break through the boot area now," I told her. 10 more seconds, she answered. Her hands had not shaken once this entire time. She pressed the last wire onto the capacitor and held it until the solder cooled. The finished circuit board was ugly, wires running everywhere, parts packed so tight it looked like a web of electronics. At its center sat one tiny crystal that Yuchu had pulled from a broken old motherboard. "Now," Yuchu called out. I pushed 2 test probes straight into the phone's charging port, right into the contact points. 1%. The screen went dark for a moment, then came back. 1 more second, and this phone would be gone forever. Yuchu took a breath and pressed the red button on her homemade board. I stared at the computer screen and did not blink. The voltage line, flat and dead for the last 30 seconds, twitched. Then it spiked. One sharp pulse shot up from the bottom of the graph like a heartbeat returning on a hospital monitor. Words appeared on the phone screen. "Compatible power detected. Handshake complete. Protocol matched." Blue light glowed around the charging port. Power was flowing in. The battery icon still sat red and dim on the dark screen. But next to it, a small green lightning bolt appeared, faint but real. The phone was charging. On the other side of the glass, Dapeng had been watching the whole time, his face pressed flat against the window. He was grinning and slapping both hands on the glass. Inside the room, the phone already read 15% and climbing. Every last bit of strength had left me. I dropped into the chair and just sat there, breathing hard. I looked over at Yuchu. Black grease was smeared across her cheek, and sweat still shone on her nose. She looked like she had fought a war, dirty, exhausted, still wearing those work gloves. To me, she had never looked better. "Thank you," I said. Yuchu pulled off her gloves and breathed out slowly, her shoulders finally dropping. Then she smiled, weak, tired, but completely real. "Looks like your future still can't survive without this caveman's physics," she said. I stood up before I even decided to. She looked up at me, surprised. I pulled her in. She went stiff for half a second but did not push me away. She rested her head against my shoulder, and we stayed like that. Outside the window, the thunder was moving away and the rain was getting softer. But the relief was short. I turned back to the workstation. "The battery won't last," I said. "This only bought us time. We had to move fast." The phone was alive now, but its body was dying. "We need to take the AI out of this phone," I said, pointing at the holographic display, "and move it into hardware we build ourselves." The phone had become a prison. The AI was trapped inside a machine that was falling apart. "I want to move the AI's mind onto our own servers," I told her, "onto the Singularity 1. Yuchu stared at me, the hologram glowing between us in the dark. But to do that, we needed far stronger chips and far more computing power than anything we had. I walked to the window and looked out at the dark city. It was time to meet the real players, TSMC, ASML, the companies that controlled the future of chips. I was going to build a 28nm chip in 2008. Anyone who heard that plan would call me insane. Right now, the best chips in the world still ran on 45 or 65 nanometers. I was trying to skip 15 years ahead for the AI, and so this country would never be controlled by someone else's technology again. Then the phone glowed in my hand. The AI's first message after waking up was not a hello. It was a red alert. Google's Android team had been secretly meeting with Mazu and the Xiaomi CEO. Android 1.0 was about to launch ahead of schedule. The mobile internet war was starting 2 years early. I read it twice to make sure. Then I smiled. "So they want to move early." "Dapeng," I said. "Tell Workshop 2 tonight nobody sleeps. Tomorrow morning I want the first Singularity 1 ready for a power-on test." I stood at the edge of the testing floor and watched the team take their positions. The foreman grabbed his radio and started passing orders down the line. July 15th, 2008. Red Star Building Materials Factory Warehouse 3. A few weeks ago, this place had been abandoned. Empty shelves, dust, nothing. Now every shelf was full. Dark machines sat in rows that stretched the whole length of the building. There were no real cooling systems, just dozens of giant industrial fans bolted to the walls. And on those shelves, packed side by side, sat hundreds of black PlayStation 3 consoles. They formed a tower that nearly touched the ceiling, all connected by a web of thick cables. Dapeng wiped sweat from his face and stared at it all. "You really think this is going to work?" We had spent almost every bit of cash the company had. Every gray market PS3 in the province and the provinces around it was now sitting right here. Dahu checked the last connections cable by cable. Dapeng stood next to me, still not believing what he was looking at. For the past week, he had felt more like a game console dealer than a tech worker. My order had been simple: buy every PS3 you can find, whatever it costs. You don't understand, I told him without looking up from my laptop. My fingers were already running through the code that would link 500 machines into one brain. The cell processor inside a PS3 is the most powerful consumer chip on the planet right now. I had pulled one apart myself. Its raw number crunching power was 10 times any Intel CPU of the same year. And since top-level NVIDIA computing cards did not exist yet in any way I could buy, and nobody in 2008 had even thought of using graphics cards for AI, only I knew what these machines were really worth. The US Air Force had once built a supercomputer out of over 1,000 PS3s. Now I was going to do the same thing with 500 in a warehouse, in a town nobody cared about. Ready? I called out to Yuchu across the warehouse floor. The phone from 2024 lay on the workbench with thin probes pushed into it from every side. The AI's face still glowed on the screen, faint, quiet, waiting. The battery fix had saved it once. It would not save it again. I had to pull the AI's core out of the phone before the hardware died for good. One mistake and the AI would be gone. Like pulling a living thing out of its body and hoping it survived the trip. Connection stable, Yuchu said. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were turning white around the probe. The voltage monitor held perfectly flat within 0.01 volts. But I have to warn you, she said. The network here is only 100 megabits. The laptop showed the same number. Cables and tools lay scattered across the desk. The transfer speed can't keep up with the AI's thinking speed. We could lose data during the move. We can't afford to wait, I said. The monitor displayed 2 words, Project Prometheus. I took one deep breath and placed my finger over the enter key and pressed it. 500 PS3s woke up at the same time. The noise hit like a wall. Every fan in every console screamed at full speed. The whole warehouse was shaking with sound so loud I could barely hear myself think. On the screen, a blue progress bar appeared. 19%. 52%. The network map lit up with hundreds of connected nodes, all working together. I sat locked to the monitor. What I was doing had no name yet, taking a 2024 AI model and forcing it into 2008 hardware by rewriting every instruction in real time. Then the lights flickered. Red and green warning lights blinked across the PS3 racks. Voltage is dropping, Yuchu shouted. The PS3 cluster is pulling too much power. The factory's transformer can't handle it. Dapeng, I yelled. Get to the breaker panel. Cut power to workshops 1 and 2. Keep warehouse 3 alive, nothing else. He was already running before I finished the sentence. He reached the panel and grabbed the switches. Workshop 1, workshop 2, off. Seconds later, every building around us went black. Only our warehouse kept its lights, the one bright spot in a factory full of darkness, 70%. Sweat ran down my face and fell onto the keyboard, but I did not look away from the screen. This was not just copying files. I was rewriting the AI's entire language in real time, translating every command from the phone's modern chip into instructions the cell processors could read, all within milliseconds. Dahu stood behind me, arms crossed, watching the screen glow in the dark warehouse. The code was scrolling faster than any human eye could follow. The AI was helping now, rewriting itself to fit its new home, 99%. Then the bar stopped. My chest went tight. The core logic is locked, Yuchu said, staring at the signal monitor. The phone's security chip won't release the emotion module. It thinks that data is a private key, something that should never be copied. Without its emotions, the AI would be nothing but a cold calculator. No understanding of people, no business sense, no personality. Just math. The one piece I needed most was the one piece the phone refused to give up. Then the phone screen lit up on its own, not red, a soft, steady glow. A thin ring of blue light ran along the edge of the phone. Words appeared on the screen. Lin Fan biosignature detected. Confirmed as highest authority host. The AI had given permission by itself. It was awake. It knew exactly what was happening, and it chose to trust me. The progress bar jumped to 100, transfer complete, and the phone screen went dark, completely finally dark. Just a piece of glass now and nothing more. 500 PS3 fans filled the warehouse with a wall of sound. But something had changed. The noise had a rhythm now, rising and falling, like something alive was breathing in the dark. Then a message appeared on my laptop, a familiar blue chat bubble. Hello Lin Fan, it's a bit noisy in here. And a bit hot. I stared at those words and felt my chest go tight. The dead phone lay on the desk beside the laptop, screen cracked and dark forever. But the AI had made it across. On the screen, the little bean avatar sat in the center of a web of data, smiling. It was free now out of that dying phone and into a real system. I smiled. Welcome to 2008. The next 3 days were the most intense the Red Star factory had ever seen. Now that the AI had a cloud brain, I could finally start the next step of my plan. I stood by the whiteboard and drew a simple diagram. The phone no longer needed to do heavy computing. I wrote 2 words at the top, cloud brain. Every hard calculation would happen on the servers. The phone itself only needed to do 3 things perfectly: display, touch, and network speed. Cloud phone. The idea was 15 years ahead of its time. I drew it out on the whiteboard. The phone sends data to the cloud. The AI handles everything, and the results come back instantly. So that's why you asked me to work on this glass, Yuchu said, holding up a transparent panel. She had used her university lab connections to get a piece of industrial-grade touch glass. It was not as strong as the Gorilla Glass that would come years later, but for 2008, it was the best thing available. I picked up the titanium alloy frame that Dahu had finished cutting and started fitting the screen into it. No buttons, no keyboard. The entire front would be nothing but screen. I held it up and turned it in my hands, one solid piece of glass and metal. How do you type? Dapang asked, staring at the blank slab. How do you do anything? With your fingers. I slid my thumb across the glass. The screen lit up and a landscape image appeared. Slide to unlock, pinch to zoom in, spread to zoom out. This was how humans were meant to use machines, touching them directly. 3 nights later, the first Singularity 1 engineering unit was assembled. It was ugly. Wires stuck out from the back and the battery was held on with tape. The circuit board was exposed and the whole thing was as thick as a brick. But when I pressed the power button, everyone in the room held their breath. No Nokia boot screen, no Windows Start menu, just a single white dot in the center of a black screen, slowly growing brighter. The dot spread into a clean dark home screen with only 7 icons. Nothing more. Singularity OS 1.0, I said, and my voice shook a little. I reached out and tapped the screen. The response was instant, smooth and fast. Yuchu leaned in beside me, sliding her finger across the display. Dahu watched over our shoulders. The AI in the cloud was filling in the gaps between frames, so the screen moved at 60 frames per second on weak hardware. We stood in front of the prototype in that cold warehouse, and for a long moment nobody said a word. Call it, I told Dapang. Make a phone call to this device. He pulled out his old Nokia flip phone and dialed the number. The Singularity 1 screen lit up. Incoming call, Red Star Factory. No green answer button, just a slider. I slid my thumb across the bar. The call connected. Hello. The sound was perfect, clear and sharp. Dapang's face broke into a grin. If we sell this thing, Nokia might as well close down. I held the cold titanium body in my hands and ran my thumb along the edge. Not yet, I said. Our production is too slow. We can barely make 10 units a month. We need a moment, one single chance to show the world what this is. I looked up at the calendar on the wall. August 2008. The 8th was circled in red. Yuchu, the factory is yours. Build these as fast as you can. I need 100 units before August 8th. Dapang, call every outdoor billboard company in Hihong. I want every big screen in the city on the night of August 8th. What exactly are we doing? Yuchu asked. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. On the proudest night this country has ever had, we light our own torch. August 8th, 2008, the Beijing Olympics opening ceremony. On a TV in the corner, the Bird's Nest Stadium glowed red and gold. The whole country was watching. Pride was in the air like electricity. The streets of Haicheng were completely empty. Every single person was indoors. Factory workers crowded around a small television, waiting for the ceremony to begin. But inside our command room, nobody was watching the Olympics. Rows of monitors covered the walls, and every one of them showed live data streams from Lingxi's back-end servers. I had pushed all 500 PS3s to their absolute limit for tonight, and I had rented every spare bit of bandwidth from Alibaba Cloud. Traffic is coming in, Dapang said, leaning over my chair and staring at the rising graph. It was 7 o'clock, 1 hour before the opening ceremony. 12 million users online. Dapang read from the screen. 12 million. China only had 200 million internet users in 2008. That meant 1 out of every 20 people online in the entire country was using Lingxi right now. I pressed a cold water bottle against my face. The servers were hot and so was I. I had not tried to fight for the video broadcast rights. Those belonged to state TV and no one could touch them. Instead, I had launched a new feature inside Lingxi called People's Torchbearer. A virtual torch glowed on the screen. Shake your phone and a flame lights up on your screen. Your GPS marks a spot on a map of China, and the flames spread across the country. In 2024, this kind of thing would be boring, but in 2008, nobody had ever seen anything like it. On the TV, the countdown had started. 18 seconds. The stadium drums were pounding. Has Tencent made their move yet? I asked. One of the technicians monitoring competitor activity shouted from across the room. They just did. QQ pushed a full pop-up to every user. A light up your icon event. It's exactly the same as ours. And they blocked our sharing links inside their chat groups. On the screen, every Lingxi link shared inside QQ was marked as blocked. They had cut us off completely. I knew they would try this. Activate the Trojan horse. Weeks ago, we had planted a small driver inside the chat accelerator that millions of users had already installed on their computers. This time it did not steal traffic. It quietly changed one line in the browser settings, the user agent string. So when a QQ user clicked on Tencent's Olympic pop-up window, their browser would start loading and then redirect somewhere unexpected. A page called Lingxi Olympics Cheer Station appeared on their screen instead. Dapang leaned back at the console and laughed. Wang Laowu was probably smashing his computer right now. His whole face was one big satisfied grin. At exactly 8 o'clock, giant footprint-shaped fireworks lit up the sky above Beijing on the TV. The ceremony had begun. I tapped the button on the Singularity 1. Now, the shake to interact signal went out to every Lingxi user in the country. 15 million phones buzzed at the same time. In living rooms, a father looked down at his phone and showed his wife the golden text on the screen. On the streets, people were already shaking their phones, laughing and showing each other. In bedrooms, teenagers jumped up and waved their phones at the TV while the final countdown hit 1. Middle-aged men in pajamas grabbed their phones off the table. Even grandparents who barely knew how to send a text message joined in, smiling as they shook. On the main screen in our command room, a dark map of China waited. Then golden dots appeared, first one, then dozens, then thousands, spreading like fire from every corner of the country. At the same time, the server load graph shot straight up. A red warning flashed, 5 million connections at once. The numbers were still climbing. The warning kept flashing, and I could hear the system groaning under the weight. Then the worst alert came. PS3 cluster temperature 85 degrees, bandwidth usage 99%. The red warnings filled every screen in the room. Every line was at its breaking point. The alarm sounds were coming from every direction now, one after another, faster and faster. Dapeng spun around from his console, face white. We can't hold it, Fan. The whole system is about to go down. The server racks were burning red, and the fans were screaming loud enough to drown out my own thoughts. Dapeng's face was covered in sweat. Tens of millions of shake requests every second. A normal server would have died 10 minutes ago. Drop all non-core data, I said. Stop sending images. Stop sending friend messages. Put every bit of power into keeping the connections alive. The system obeyed. Dynamic downgrade running. Image loading blocked. Local cache taking over. I ran into the server room and the heat hit me like a wall. Bring the ice! I shouted at the workers and they came running with heavy crates. Giant blocks of ice, the kind used to keep seafood fresh, carried right up to the glowing racks. The workers stacked them next to the machines, close enough that the metal hissed on contact. Someone dragged in industrial fans and pointed them straight at the ice. Cold mist filled the warehouse floor, the most basic, most stupid cooling system ever built. But it worked. The temperature held at 90.7 degrees right on the edge, refusing to climb higher. On the TV mounted above us, the torchbearer ran across the top of the Bird's Nest Stadium. And on our screen, the digital fire trail reached Beijing at the exact same moment. The whole map of China was burning gold. A message appeared on every user's phone. You are the 13,452,101st torchbearer lighting up China. Lingxi is with you. Dapeng sank into his chair so deep I thought he would melt into it. The servers held. The room exploded. Everyone was on their feet. Dahu, Yuchu, the technicians, all of them shouting at once. Yuchu grabbed me and pressed her face into my chest. She was crying. Someone threw a keyboard into the air and nobody even cared where it landed. I leaned against the wall, soaked from head to toe. Behind me, the final number glowed on the main screen, 18 million. 18 million daily active users. 6 million connected at the same time. Sweat dripped down my face, but I could not stop looking at that number. This little company born inside an old factory had just reached 1/10 of China's entire internet. After tonight, Lingxi would not be a small app anymore. It would be something nobody could ignore. And Tencent could try to block us again, but it was too late. We were too big to kill. I wiped my face with my sleeve and pushed off the wall. I walked out of the command room and left the noise behind. I climbed the old iron ladder to the factory roof. Fireworks were popping across the city sky. Someone was already up there, a white dress, a beer in her hand, the night wind pulling at her skirt. Yuchu. She stood at the edge of the roof, looking out over the water. She heard me coming and turned around. Without a word, she held out a cold can. Your digital torch worked, she said, smiling as she handed me a beer. I took a long drink. The cold went straight through me and washed everything away. The heat, the fear, all of it. I stepped closer and took her hand. Not my torch, I said. Ours. I looked out at the city lights below, thousands of windows glowing warm in the dark. The Red Star factory sign hummed red above us. We stood there, side by side, and the moment did not need any more words. After everything, the debt, the near bankruptcy, the war with Tencent, and tonight's madness, we were still standing. Lin Fan, Yuchu said quietly. I turned to look at her. You said you wanted to use technology to change the world. She looked straight at me and the fireworks lit up something soft in her eyes. So did you change my world? I paused, the beer still cold in my other hand. The last time I looked into those eyes, they were full of tears and hopelessness. Now they held fireworks in the faint shape of my reflection. I set the bottle down and reached for her hand. I don't know if I changed the world, I said, but I know my world only makes sense because of you. A golden firework opened directly above us, and its light fell over our hands, still locked together. On this summer night in 2008, standing on the roof of a factory nobody had heard of 6 months ago, I pulled her close and kissed her, and the sky kept burning gold above our heads. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from the AI. Traffic report. During tonight's data rush, an unusual scanning signal was detected. Source IP points to Mountain View, California, Google headquarters. A second message followed. The father of Android, Anthony, had noticed us. I stared at the screen and the smile on my face grew wider. I squeezed Yuchu's hand a little tighter. Together we looked past the fireworks, past the harbor, toward the far side of the ocean. The real show, I whispered, is just getting started. August 12, 2008. The Olympics were still burning hot across every screen in the country. But inside our factory's meeting room, the air was cold enough to see your breath. No air conditioning, just the leftover ice blocks from the server room melting slowly in the corner. At one end of the table sat 3 foreigners with backpacks and polo shirts. The one in front wore gold-rimmed glasses and had eyes that measured everything they touched. His fingers tapped the table in a slow, steady rhythm. Anthony, the father of Android. Right now, he was not the man Google would one day push out. He was the man who held Android in his fist and planned to reshape the world with it. I sat across from him with Dahu standing behind me like a guard dog. In my hand was the Singularity 1, still ugly, still wrapped in tape, still the only phone of its kind on the planet. I leaned back in my chair like I had all day. No rush. Anthony opened with 2 words of bad Chinese, then switched to smooth English. We tracked your app. Lingxi, is it? His blue eyes sharpened behind the gold frames. He pointed at the phone on the table showing the SoulLink logo. In one night it called millions of low-level hardware functions. And the logic behind those calls looks very much like our unreleased Android 1.0. We suspect you stole Google's code. The translator beside him opened his mouth to repeat it in Chinese. I waved him off and answered in English. Clean California English, no accent. Mr. Anthony, you should be careful with that kind of talk. I turned my laptop around and pushed it toward him. The code is right here. Check every line. If a single line matches your Android, I will eat this prototype. Anthony blinked. He had not expected perfect English from a Chinese teenager, or this much nerve. Then how did you do it? He asked, pointing at the prototype. We used the best HTC hardware in our lab and barely got a touchscreen working. I smiled and slid the engineering prototype across the table toward him. Try it yourself. Anthony paused for a second, then reached for the device, a boxy, taped-together thing that looked like it belonged in a recycling bin. His fingers touched the screen. One swipe. The unlock animation flowed like water, and the home screen icons spread open without a single stutter. His pupils shrank. I watched it happen in real time. He kept swiping, tapping, scrolling, faster and faster. Even the iPhone 3G could not move like this, and he knew it. He opened Lingxi and tapped the voice input button, then leaned close to the microphone. "Hello, Google," he said. Half a second later, the words appeared on screen, perfectly recognized. Then the phone automatically opened a map and dropped a pin right on Google's headquarters. The tech lead next to Anthony grabbed the phone out of his hands. "Impossible. This CPU is 2 years old." He pulled up the system specs, ARM11 400 MHz. A chip that old had no business running voice recognition at all. "That's because this phone is just a screen," I said. Anthony's eyes locked onto mine. "The real brain," he repeated slowly. I pointed upward. "Is in my servers. Every heavy task runs in the cloud. The phone just shows the result." The phone's glow reflected in Anthony's glasses, and for the first time since he sat down, the confidence left his face. What had been quiet disrespect in his eyes turned into something else entirely, the look of a man who just realized he was behind. He had heard people talk about cloud phones in Silicon Valley coffee shops. Everyone agreed it was at least 10 years away, and here it was running on junk hardware in a Chinese factory. Anthony took a slow breath. "Name your price." "Google is willing to buy your team and your technology. $10 million, plus an L5 engineer position at Google headquarters for you personally. $10 million. In 2008, that was nearly 70 million yuan. Dapeng's eyes looked ready to fall out of his head. Under the table, his foot kicked mine so hard I almost flinched. I picked up the half-finished cola and shook my head. "Mr. Anthony, you misunderstand," I said. "I'm not here looking for a job, and I'm not here to sell my team or my technology." I reached into my bag and pulled out a document, a cross-licensing agreement, prepared by the AI. "I want full root-level access to Android in the Chinese market. And when Google search leaves China, I want the right to replace Android's default search engine." Anthony looked at me the way you look at someone who has lost their mind. "Do you even know what you're saying?" he said. "Google leave China? That's impossible." I smiled and said nothing. I knew exactly where history was going. I just couldn't explain why. "Think of it as a bet," I said, pointing at the agreement on the table. "If Google is still in China 2 years from now, this paper means nothing. It dies on its own. But if they leave, I get the market. And in exchange, I turned the laptop toward him, showing the Cloud Touch optimization system. "I'll license this to Android. It will close the speed gap with iOS." Anthony went quiet. He was crazy about technology, and he knew exactly how much this system was worth. He looked down at the Android phone in his hands. The thing could barely scroll without freezing. 10 minutes later, he signed. We shook hands. He still thought Google leaving China was a joke, but the algorithm was too good to refuse. "You're a gambler," Anthony said, putting his pen away. "We'll be watching from Google. Hope you don't go broke too fast." After the Google team left, Dapeng dropped into his chair like his bones had turned to water. "Fan, do you really think Google will leave?" I looked out the window. The Google truck was already pulling away. Some things nobody can stop. Then Yuchu walked in, carrying a tray covered in red cloth. "Done," I said. She pulled the cloth aside. 2 devices sat on the tray, one black and smooth, the other cold silver with sharp edges. "I followed the formula you gave me," Yuchu said. She held up a sheet of glass. "We fired it in the factory kiln for 7 days and 7 nights. She was tired, but her smile was real. Hardness reached 6.5. Light passes through at 98%. She pressed a metal pen tip against the glass to prove it. Not a scratch. On the table lay the titanium alloy frame. The antenna signal problem was solved. I picked up the new body. Cold metal, tight fit. Every part locked in place. This was the final form of the Singularity 1. I held it above my head toward the light. With this, we're not a small code shop anymore. We're a hardware company. But Yuchu's expression shifted. "The production yield is only 10%. And Shanghai is making moves again," she said, looking down at the reports on the desk. Something cold settled behind my eyes the moment I heard that name. "He reported the Red Star factory for environmental violations," Yuchu explained. "He's working with the business bureau to shut down our production line, and he bribed our raw material suppliers. They cut off our titanium alloy supply completely." The room went silent. I leaned back in my chair. Environmental shutdown, supply line cut, Shanghai was attacking from every side. But then I let myself smile. If this had been my first day back in this life, maybe I would have been scared. Not now. I had 18 million daily users, a deal with Google, and technology that hadn't been invented yet. Dahu watched me from across the table, waiting for a decision. "Destroying Shanghai," I said quietly, "is easier than stepping on an ant." My phone lit up. The AI had built a complete file on Zhao Shanghai, over 1,000 records. Bribery records from 2005. Tax evasion ledgers, copies of forged construction permits, and quality reports proving his unfinished buildings were falling apart from the inside. Everything was there. I called a meeting. Push all of it, everywhere, all at once. Send it to every journalist, every newspaper, and push it to every single Lingxi user in this city. I pressed the button. That night at 8, a woman on her couch looked down at her phone and stopped moving. Across town, a man in his kitchen stared at the same notification. An old couple in bed both received the Lingxi push at the same time. The headline hit like a truck: "The city's richest man exposed. Bribery, fraud, unfinished buildings that swallowed workers' life savings." The evidence was complete and clear. Photos, documents, even an AI-cleaned recording of Shanghai bragging at dinner about who he had paid off. By the next morning, police cars lined up outside Changhei's mansion. Boots hit the ground before the engines went cold. They pulled Zhao Changhei out of his own front door in pajamas, hands already cuffed. As the officers led him through the house, the TV in his living room was still on morning news. On screen, Lin Fan stood in front of Red Star Factory with a microphone in his face, smiling. "We will buy every abandoned factory under Changhei Real Estate," the boy on TV said, "and turn them into the Singularity Tech Park. The workers can go back to work." Changhei stared at the screen. His name was gone, his buildings were gone, and the boy who took them was smiling. His legs gave out. He sank into the couch and stayed there, staring at nothing. He never understood what he had picked a fight with. 1 month later, September 2008. The Singularity 1 entered mass production at Red Star Factory. The old chimneys no longer blew black smoke. Inside, robotic arms moved under clean white light along a modern assembly line. I stood on the second-floor walkway looking down at the factory below. Phones were taking shape one by one, assembled by machines I had designed in my head months ago. "Fan, the first batch is only 50,000 units, Dapeng said, checking his clipboard. "People online are calling us a slideshow phone, all talk, nothing real, 50,000. That's what the production sheet said, printed in red. "Will 50,000 even sell?" Dapeng asked, gripping the paper with both hands. I looked at him. 50,000 won't last 5 seconds. "By the way, did you book the launch venue?" Dapeng clapped his hands together. "Beijing 798 Art District. The biggest tank hall they have." "Good." Yuchu was on the factory floor nearby, phone in one hand, blue glove on the other. "Yuchu," I said. On the day of the launch, she looked up, surprised. "Me? Why would I go on stage?" she said. "I don't know anything about business." I held up the phone. "You don't know business, but you know this. You built it. You're the chief hardware engineer. You're its mother." I stepped closer and brushed the loose hair from her face. "I want the whole world to see who stands beside me." Her eyes went wide. She didn't answer right away. Her face was burning red. But she didn't refuse. She just closed her eyes and nodded, once. Outside the window, autumn leaves drifted past the glass. The summer of 2008 was ending, but the age of singularity was only beginning. The calendar on the wall already showed October. October 1st, 2008, National Day. Beijing, 798 Art District. 2 words on a massive black wall. "Hello." People gathered close, reading the smaller text beneath. Singularity 1, 2008-10. The crowd kept growing. Young faces, bright eyes, the kind of energy this old art district had never felt before. The giant industrial tank was wrapped in black, carrying nothing but those 2 words and a single point of white light. "Hello, future." That was all it said. That was all it needed. Fireworks split the sky above the building as the plaza filled to every edge. No celebrity sponsors, no pop music. Just a stage, a screen, and thousands of people who came because they believed. From above, the venue looked like a river of people flowing between 2 walls of brick and light. Linksy fans had come from across the country wearing pins and homemade badges with our logo. Even the National Finance Channel had set up cameras. CCTV was here. Backstage, Dapeng sat in front of a mirror in a dark suit, pulling at his red tie for the 3rd time. "Fan," he said, his voice tight. "There are way too many people out there. And I just saw something," Dapeng said, still pulling at his tie. I peeked through the curtain gap. Front row, center seat. Nokia's China president sitting there with a face carved from stone. Dapeng was sweating through his collar. "He looks like he wants to kill someone, Fan." I turned back to the mirror and checked myself one last time. I looked ready. More importantly, I felt ready. The person in the reflection was calm, maybe too calm for what was about to happen. Thousands of people were making noise outside, but none of it reached me. Backstage, the demo equipment was getting its final check. Yuchu had insisted on testing every machine herself. She said she would not relax until she did. I smiled. Time to give the world something to remember. I fixed my collar and headed for the stage. The lights dropped. The entire hall fell silent in one breath. Thousands of faces in the dark, all pointed at the same spot. A single blue dot appeared on the giant screen. It started spinning, splitting apart, growing into something alive. A ring of blue light formed and a gentle voice filled the hall. "Hello, I am AI." The crowd held its breath, not a recording, but a voice generated live. A spotlight hit the center of the stage, and I walked toward it. No small talk, no warm-up. I raised the microphone. Why would anyone want to go back to the past? My voice carried through every corner of the hall. Because we are not happy with today. We are tired of keyboards eating half the screen. We are tired of watching companies across the ocean decide what our future looks like. I reached into my pocket. The Singularity 1 lit up in my hand. Slide to unlock. Full touchscreen. No keyboard. I held it up for everyone to see. Today, we reinvent the phone. The next hour was mine. I showed them pinch to zoom, 2 fingers on a photo, and the image grew on the big screen. I opened the App Store and downloaded a game with 1 tap. The crowd lost it. Then I held up the phone and spoke to it. "Send Yuchu a message. I want hot pot." The phone typed the message and sent it by itself. No hands, no keyboard. In the front row, the Nokia president's face had lost all its color. He gripped his armrest, half ready to stand up and walk out. While other companies were still fighting basic software problems, the Singularity 1 had already brought real intelligence into people's hands. I looked toward the side of the stage. Now the person who designed this phone's hardware and Singularity Tech's co-founder, Shen Yuchu. She was waiting in the wings, dressed in white, hands clasped in front of her. She stepped into the light and walked toward me across the stage. A little nervous. I could see it in her eyes. But the moment she reached my side, she found her balance. Together, we walked through the hardware, screen, battery, every part. Every piece was built by our team at Red Star Factory. They gave it their days and their nights. Yuchu smiled. She knew that better than anyone. Camera flashes went off everywhere, and the applause shook the walls. That photo, me in black, her beside me, became the most famous picture in Chinese tech that year. How much? Someone shouted from the crowd and 100 voices joined in. I turned to the screen and the number appeared behind me. Not 5,000, not 4,000, 1999 yuan. 3 full seconds of dead silence. Then the place exploded, screaming fists in the air, people jumping to their feet. In a world where Nokia's best phone cost 5,000, 1999 was not just a price, it was a weapon no one could answer. But I was not losing money on this. Linksee's ad revenue, plus the app store's cut from every download, that was the real business behind the number. On sale now, I said and snapped my fingers. The countdown on the big screen hit 1. Backstage, Dapang sat in front of 6 monitors, staring at the server numbers pouring in. Tears ran down his face. They're gone. All 50,000 gone in seconds. In the audience, the Nokia president stared at his phone with a tight jaw. He dialed headquarters. Standing at his office window later that night, he said it plainly. Our China market is finished. After the event, Yuchu and I slipped away from the crowd of reporters. We found a quiet rooftop in 798, with the whole city spread out before us. She looked at the Singularity 1 in her hand. Is it really over? It feels like a dream. I pulled her close. No, this is just the beginning. We still need 4G towers, chip-making machines, a whole new chip factory. She listened, looking up at me with those quiet, steady eyes. And we need to get married, I added. She froze mid-breath. What did you just say? I looked at her and reached into my pocket. Not a diamond, a ring of titanium alloy carved from factory scraps. Inside the band, a tiny line of code. I got down on one knee and held it out. Diamonds are just carbon, not worth much. Titanium is built for space. It never rusts. Will you stay with me all the way to the end? Her eyes filled with tears she could not stop. She held out her hand, voice breaking. Yes, you idiot. I slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly because I had made it for her. Right then, the phone in my back pocket buzzed. A message from 2024. The AI's final message filled the screen. The timeline has changed. The tragic future is gone. You built a new one. My offline mission is complete, connecting to this era's cloud. Goodbye, host. I stood on the rooftop, reading the last words. Goodbye, Lin Fan. Hello, world. 10 years later, 2018. Where the old Red Star factory once stood, a tower now rose 600 meters into the sky. Singularity tech written across its face in light. I stood at the top floor behind walls of glass, watching the sunset pour across the city. 35 years old. A proper suit now, a bigger office, but the same eyes. $2 trillion. That was our market value. Phones, chips, self-driving cars, even rockets. I straightened my tie. Some habits never change. The tower glowed against the night sky. The biggest tech company on Earth, born in an old factory. The office door opened behind me, and a small pair of arms wrapped around my legs. Daddy, Mom says come home for dinner. She made your favorite. I picked her up and held her against the glass. Let's go home. She waved a phone in front of my face, completely see-through, thin as a sheet of glass. Daddy, the AI lady told me a story. She said phones used to have keyboards. I looked at her. That question hit me somewhere deep. I tapped her nose and smiled. They did. A long, long time ago. Back then, phones were slow and the internet barely worked. But the people, they moved fast. Because they were chasing something bigger than themselves, something called the future. I held my daughter and looked out at the city, every light out there. A small piece of what we had built. A hologram filled the sky outside. Singularity tech, 10 years. My younger self stood on a stage, holding up that very first phone. 10 years had passed, but the feeling from that first summer was still here. I looked at nothing and smiled. Thank you, all 10 years of it. Then a voice answered from somewhere behind me, gentle calm filling the whole room. The AI. Not the old version from a borrowed future, but something new. Something that had grown far beyond what I first built. A small device on the desk glowed, light rising from it in every direction. My creator, for the next 10 years, where do we go? I looked up, past the towers, past everything, all the way to the stars and the endless sea beyond them.